Oh, yeah. Oh, hilarious.
Laughing at this girl getting her arm fucking snapped. Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Belly down. That's Alliance going like this. And then do you see the medic team like
Oh, that girl is in pain.
They're screaming assassina. Assassin in Portuguese.
Yeah. Oh my God. Were you at that what was it? I think it was 8. Oop,
I just think it's so funny that like you see her break the arm, she's like this. The medic comes, and then
while she's standing celebrating, and you're like, "What the fuck?"
She could have gotten that girl, but she got me, and I was too scared to break her arm. And I would have had a blue belt podium promotion and all the things if I had gotten gold, and I didn't because I wouldn't just submit her.
Just snap that shit.
Yeah,
you can grab those if you would.
Oh yeah,
like, incredible. Were you at the AGF where Tyson fucking destroyed that kid's leg?
No.
This kid, it was like
was that a heel hook or what was it?
No, I think it was a belly down straight ankle lock.
Those are bad.
It was the kid was like laughing at some of Tyson's entries, and the ref was clueless. Apparently, this kid was like AGF's golden boy. He like came all the way out here from Oklahoma, all this shit, and then he was laughing at some of Tyson's leg entries, and then Tyson, as like time is running down, like 10 seconds left, gets a straight ankle, rolls over, belly down, and just cranks it, and you hear it sound like a baseball bat. Just crack, and then just inaudible screaming from the kid. And the ref is like screaming at Tyson. She's like, I said stop. The lady didn't say stop. Literally, she was sitting there watching it. The time was like, there was 2 seconds left. And this kid is like screaming, air cast, like the whole thing.
That's
for
horrible.
A piece of metal that's worth $3. You can buy that shit on Alibaba for $1, and that kid didn't walk for weeks because of that.
The other thing is like you would feel that coming.
Yeah, you feel the pressure build.
Yeah, because there's times that I've tapped that I wasn't sure it was going to break my leg, and it would like come out bruised and stuff, and nothing was damaged. And I'm like, okay, that was just like pressure, or just it was like tight, like the grip was tight. But that's like one of those things where I'm like, I feel like he would have known, and was just coming. And belly down. If you can't get your knee out, bruh.
The instant they roll over, if they have your ankle and they roll, dude, it's over.
So this is the other thing. If you roll over, but you keep rolling back to the middle, you get DQ'd in IBJJF, I think. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you're going to the outside and you roll and your belly down.
You have it,
and if you continue rolling towards the inside, they count that I think is like a heel hook almost or something. So that's like a DQ in IBJJF. I want to say like new breed and stuff too. But if you notice like the IBJJF, like the Atos kids who are blue belts and doing all this stuff, they'll go belly down but up to their knees and then like break it that way. You know what I mean? Like they're facing like away from them and they're just like up, it's in their armpit, and they stop there.
Motherfuckers care way too much about winning.
Yeah.
A little medal. Like when Brandon's always talking about people getting into a shootout, and it's like, yeah, cool. You won. At what cost? I
don't need to win jiu-jitsu that bad.
I don't need to win.
But also I blame the person for not tapping. It's one thing if you're kind of clearly caught in a place that you don't know. Because we work with people who are less experienced than us. So I'm pretty sure that there's like a lot of entries and other things that are like, what the heck is, I mean, a calf slicer would like blow your knee before you even know. You just know it's uncomfortable, but you're like, am I supposed to be doing something here?
Yeah. There's some where you don't feel it coming. And then there's some like a straight ankle lock where it's like, dude, you can feel that pressure building in your ankle. And
you're stuck and you're not escaping.
I was going to say, you're pinned. There's nowhere you can go. That leg is isolated and you feel your foot going. And it's like, dude, this thing's about to get.
It's going to the side already. Like that already feels like it's, like a sickled foot in ballet. That's the same kind of break. And those are career-ending dance injuries.
Yeah. I popped a kid with a toe hold one time in training. I felt really, really bad. He was like I think he was a white belt, and I was just doing it to like threaten from top half, and I caught it, and I just started to go, and then he freaked out and like rolled and went belly down and like popped his own ankle, and it literally sounded like Velcro. I was like...
I don't count that you injured him, I think.
Austin was like, yeah, man, like you should just like start rolling the podcast like early and like don't do a formal intro and just like talk shit and then be like, oh, this is Rachel Lamb from Honesty Jiu Jitsu, and she is a cruel person that broke someone's arm, didn't break someone's arm.
I didn't. I mean, I don't think it's a real break. It's not like those purple belt breaks. It's just like a sore arm for 8 to 12 weeks, probably.
What's the worst you've gotten popped?
I would just say the 2 fractures. I haven't had like a ligament because I fractured a finger.
You broke your toe in a competition.
Finger. Yeah.
And the finger's in competition too?
No, I was just working with Amon and I just was holding his collar and he just broke the grip. And he was like, oh, I felt that. And I was like, something happened. And I wasn't sure it was broken, but I normally, like, I don't even think I have a high pain tolerance or anything, but I sat there and I was like, oh, I need to cry because this hurts. And then even after that, like I sat there and it was so swollen. And when I looked at it, it was bruised and I thought it was dislocated. So I sent a picture to the doctor and I was like, hey, can you put this back in? Can you diagnose me? They're like, I think you need to come in. And even as she looked at it, she was like, it's broken.
Yeah.
And Brady, like, low-key diagnosed me without diagnosing me because he looked at it and he said, when my finger looked like that, it was broken.
Yeah. That's tough. You get kind of desensitized to all that, though.
Yeah. Okay.
In a weird way.
No, this is absolutely true because the first time I ever went to competitions, the very first time I went to like a NAGA with our old gym that we were only at for like 12 weeks, we went to a NAGA and I remember watching all of the kids doing jiu-jitsu and I was like, oh, this is like a day at Little League. Like this feels like like a soccer tournament or something. You see all the little kids and you see the adults doing it and everyone's like, are you going to compete? And you're like, I don't know. But you watch it, you're like, oh, this is so doable. And then you see the first like round of like white belts breaking each other's elbows and you're like, oh, okay. Because I saw someone we only had like 3 or 4 people from my gym that were competing and one of them was doing an arm bar and the guy was doing like the S-grip defense. Yeah. And it just went, and he screamed. I watched the worst broken elbow I've ever seen up until this point. Cause I never did extreme sports or skateboarding or anything like that. And after that, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah, I've done one tournament. My mom begged me to go.
Which one was it?
New breed. I did a new breed and my mom was like begging me to go. And I was like, you really don't want to do this. Like, you really don't want to come to this. And she's like, no, like I want to be supportive. And I was like, fine, you can come. I'm sitting there, I'm like trying to focus, nervous as shit. And this kid right before me, white belt, got caught in, I think, an omoplata, and he tried to roll. And it sounded also like the kid that's ankle got snapped like a baseball bat and just screaming in pain. And
maybe it came out of place because I feel like that's like a dislocated elbow, right? Or shoulder.
I don't know what it was because as soon as I heard that, I was like, headphones back on. We're going to try and block this out because it was bad.
That's how I felt at Pans when the girls were coming up to the what do they call it? The emergency medicine station or whatever. I keep saying medic station, but I'm like, I feel like that's a military term. So I don't know what that would be called.
I think it's medic.
Yeah, the medical station. These girls kept coming up on Pans. It was like adult purple belt day. This girl came up and you could tell she's crying. She's like, it goes this way, not this way. And then another girl, and I was like, I can't beat by the juju because it feels, because I never think about getting injured, knock on wood. I mean, this isn't wood. I don't know. Close enough. There's probably wood underneath this laminate table.
Right there. You got it. Lean. There you go.
I don't think about getting injured. I don't think about what could happen. Sometimes I also have to think like, oh, there's all these like competitors, like black belt competitors and whatever, and you never see them get injured. Mm-hmm. So I do try to think that. I'm like, this is such a common thing. Like, you don't get injured, and stuff like that gets me in my head where it's like, you don't think about this when we roll. Like, every time you have open sparring, this could happen, and you don't think about it the same. I do know it is a little more extreme because you're going to push yourself a little bit further, escape a little later than normal, not, because you are in a competition. So I do think that's where the injuries come. But I definitely feel like, I don't know. It's just like something that I normally wouldn't think about until I see that. And then I start to get in my head about it.
Yeah,
and when it's right in front of you.
Right in front is bad. I remember right after it happened too, my mom walked up. She's like, I liked it better when you played baseball. It's like, I told you not to come to this. Like, I told you to stay away. Yeah. But no, it's weird. I mean, even just going and watching, I don't know. There's you can feel that it's just a little bit more intense. Like, even if you're watching a tournament does not feel like watching an open mat.
No.
And you'll have 2 people from different gyms in open mat that are like getting after it. And you're like, oh, okay, like those guys are getting after it. But like, I don't know, there's something, at least for me, like in the air in a tournament where you're like.
It's also, you would never do certain things to your training partners that when you're in competition, you're like, okay, this is the time to do the thing if I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's true. Like, you trust that your training partners aren't going to pop you.
Mm-hmm, and you trust that. And even, I think that's the benefit of doing competition training is like, if you do competition training, you're probably training with other people who are competing, and you do go a little bit further. Like, you don't have, because one of my things is I'm like, I need to be able to break a girl's arm because they just won't tap. Yeah. So you're going to go your whole 5, 6, however long your matches are, if you don't get them to tap or break something or something pops for them to tap. So like, I've realized that I'm like, but with so many training partners, especially if they're lower belts than you, like, you don't want to like pop their elbow when they're a white belt and pull them out of training for 8 to 12 weeks because they were dumb and didn't tap or didn't know.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like you trust people a lot more. I remember there was one time I was training with DK and it was like he gave me an arm bar or we were starting in an arm bar and like I had him like right at the fulcrum and he was like squirming around like crazy trying to hitchhiker and I was like, what are you doing? And I'm like sitting there like inching.
Because
and then
you can
finally
feel it. There's nowhere.
You feel that it's tension. A full tension. And like you get to a point where I was like sitting there like, bro, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm not going much further. And then he tapped and I was like, what the fuck was that? And he literally got up. He's like, I know you're not going to break my arm. I was like, okay.
And that's who you work with. That's who you work on those type of escapes with, though, because you have to really trust someone's not going to really pop you when you're doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like let you feel it out and all that kind of stuff. And then you know where your limits are. I guess that's also the problem with heel hooks, because I was watching, because Lachlan Giles has like Submeta and I do watch a lot of that. And he was talking about a lot of heel hook things. And he's like, this is where you would tap, because just know that if this was a competition and someone sends it, it's broken. Yeah. So he's like, sometimes I'll look and they'll look and we'll look and we'll be like, you'll have that whole conversation.
You make the eye contact. Yeah. Like, are we doing this right now?
Are we doing this? Yeah. And if they don't, but he's like, you won't have all that time. So I think that also happens where people, like if you're used to training partners who are giving you that extra second, if you don't know that that's when you should have done the thing and someone just purges into it, there goes your knee.
Yeah. Also, I'm going to do the intro. I realized I never actually did the thing. All right. This is Rachel Lamb, host of the Rest of Us podcast and a blue belt at Odyssey Jiu Jitsu. Mm-hmm. And did you say if you felt guilty? Did you feel guilty when you popped that girl's arm?
I always check that someone's okay, because I don't care. It's not like this is ADCC, and I don't want anyone to do that to me. Mm-hmm. So like, obviously like you check, but you can't control when someone taps. And a lot of the girls are always like, oh, I'm fine. It just does that.
No, it doesn't. Okay. Arms don't move that way.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I've had that and you feel fine. And then like day 2, day 3, you're like, oh, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Normally, something, even when I injured my wrist in wrestling practice, but even when that happened, I felt a sharp pain and I was like, this is going to be fucked up for like, so can I swear on this podcast? Same question.
I swear all the time on this thing. Yeah,
incredible. Bad. Okay. Yeah, I knew it was fucked up from like when it first happened. I was like, ugh. And then I remembered I've been wrist locked before as like an early blue belt, and that took 2 months before I could do a push up again.
Oh my God.
So I knew when
How
this
bad
happened,
did you get wrist locked?
It was so bad. I got wrist locked with both hands. Like, cause you know how when you're like escaping from bottom out, and I was being very obnoxious and like very difficult to submit and all that stuff. And I got double wrist locked. I was like, stop. I didn't know they came on that fast until and I felt like almost like 3 pops. You can feel the individual rips of whatever is going on. I felt that and I was like, ah. And then I just couldn't do a push up.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I don't think this one was as bad, but I rolled on it more because I didn't think it was as bad, and now it's bad. So
it's weird how even if there's not like a crazy, like you, at least for me, you kind of stop getting the adrenaline dump like after like 3-6 months, like you stop getting that. Even if you're training and then you stop, it still just kind of continues to get worse. Like when my elbow got popped in training, it was like, it happened. And I was like, and I kind of shook it out. And I was like, I think it's okay.
And you keep training.
And I kept training. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, oh, this is not okay.
I've made it a habit that if I feel like I've injured something, to sit out for the rest of the night because of that exact thing. Because you can't tell when your body's warm and there's adrenaline and like the swelling, and you just don't have that. Mm-hmm. And the next day you're like, oh, nothing happened, which is like 60% of the time, but 40% of the time, it's like, I'm really glad I stopped rolling yesterday because this was bad.
Yeah, and then I would have just exacerbated it.
Yeah, I sat out when I injured my wrist because it was just so bad. But I think what did it was when I was like 2 or 3 weeks after it had happened, I did like a really solid double leg takedown where she came off the ground. And so you're lifting all that weight with just your injured wrist.
And then
yeah.
You wake up and you're like, that was a really bad idea.
I felt it jiggle. Like I felt, you know what I mean? Like it just feels like not as stable. I don't know. People are like, wow, I don't want to do jiu-jitsu ever.
We were saying this before, like the official intro or whatever. You get so desensitized to all of that where you're like, oh yeah, man, you just popped your elbow. Like it'll, if it's not that bad, like you'll be back. And then you tell, like, I was walking around at Yellowstone, the neighborhood I'm selling, mm-hmm. and I was kind of like hobbling, and they're like, what'd you do? And I was like, oh, like a jiu-jitsu thing. And they're like, what happened? And I was like, a buddy of mine was like attacking my ankle, and like I tried to fight out of it a little too hard, and it's just a little sore. And they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, what do you mean? Like I'll hobble for 2 days and then it'll be fine. Like, what are we talking about?
Embarrassed too because in the grand scheme of jiu-jitsu injuries, it's not that bad.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, that's how because even when I went to the doctor, I'm like, sorry guys, and they're like, you have a pretty bad sprain. And also when they use words that I normally say like pop a knee, pop my wrist. Yeah. I like pop my wrist or wrist lock myself. When someone says like, oh, you have like a moderate sprain, or like you have a fracture or this, or like they describe the kind of fracture, I'm like, that is weird to hear real terms being applied to it.
Yeah, it's so much easier to just like compartmentalize and pack down. If you're like, I got popped it, it's fine.
I popped it, I'm taped it up because I popped my wrist.
Yeah, and then everyone else in the entire world is like, you're a psycho. You hurt yourself fighting someone, and then you kept doing it. You're like, yeah, but like, I'm not soft. Like, what are we talking about?
I went to a girls' night on Monday, and they were like, oh, what happened to your wrist? I was like, it just hurts.
It's just so much easier.
So instead of trying to describe what happened, okay, I was blocking a shot and her weight went into it and then it wrist locked. And that one's like not that crazy.
Then it's all over their head.
Yeah, but then like also like I remember the finger too is just like I was holding a collar grip and he broke my grip and my finger went with it. You don't have that conversation with people who don't do jujitsu.
And they don't understand at all. No. Or they're like, oh, so how's your taekwondo? And you're like, I'm going to kill someone.
That people talk to you. They talk to you a lot about taekwondo? Because people bring taekwondo up all the time for me.
Yes. I literally had a lady on the phone yesterday, and she actually, the lady that I was talking about the ankle with, and I was just doing like follow-up calls, and she was like, oh, like, how's the taekwondo stuff you're doing? And I was like, I'm not going to get mad.
Although, like, I have respect for all martial arts. I'm one of those people, but I looked at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like, because I want to say it was Tanner who did taekwondo that trains with us.
Okay.
And he's got an incredible base because he's so functionally flexible. Like, you try to sweep the guy and he's just like in the splits.
The taekwondo, well, like a lot of the other stuff like taekwondo and karate, it's like there are people that do it and they take it seriously. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, those guys are badasses. Like taekwondo dudes will fucking kick your head off. But also then there's like the people that are like, oh yeah, my nephew has a black belt in taekwondo. It only took him like 2 years. And you're like, shut up. Like that's great. I'm glad for Timmy. I'm glad Timmy has his black belt in taekwondo.
There's definitely I don't think they probably have the same kind of lineage thing that jiu-jitsu has. So there's probably a lot of like Walmart taekwondo. Because I know that one of the things, at least, because the original program that I did was in a kids karate gym. They like borrowed mat space and like had an extra room. And then they did the jujitsu program and used those mats. And the rest of it was a karate gym.
Okay.
And I know that the way they sell things is like you can basically buy like a lifetime membership that gets you to black belt. So you just are like, oh, I'm going to pay for like however much karate. And like my kid will just keep showing up and then eventually get like a black belt in karate. And I think some places are like that. And I don't think it's like, oh, your instructor was like, trained with this person who trained with this person. Like it is in jiu-jitsu.
I bet it used to be like that though. I bet when it first came over, is Taekwondo from South Korea? It's a Korean thing.
I think
Taekwondo is Korean. I bet when it initially started, it was a lot more like intense.
Yeah.
And
they had lineage and you could make sure that the technique you're learning is solid or something like that.
And it's like, oh, wow, well, this guy actually trained in Korea and then got his black belt in Korea. Like, this is super respectable. And then guys that got black belts from him and it just like got to the point where it's like, look, if you're
a black belt of a black belt of a black belt of a black belt, and then that guy was like a recreational dude who showed up on Fridays.
Yeah.
For 15 years.
And then now he's like.
And then now he owns a gym.
I feel like, I don't know. That gives people a lot of false confidence, I bet. But there's the same thing in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the self-defense stuff in jiu-jitsu, it's like you'll see the videos and you're like, I don't think that's going to work for you. Like,
the place that I started at did self-defense. And it was like the Gracie combative stuff, which it does work. But we learned like an old school arm bar. Like pinch the knees together, back, heel, straight across the middle. Like we didn't learn.
Oh, like just come straight. Okay.
Yeah. And it'll break an arm. Like it's functional. But I just feel like because the sport has evolved and we understand mechanics and so much troubleshooting with good defense and stuff like that, it's just not the same way that you would do an art. Like, we do like the one that's like you almost figure four over the shoulder to raise the fulcrum and do all the things.
Yeah.
Or the 2 feet behind the head.
What do you think? There we go. Cool.
Okay.
I'm going to try and stop touching this thing. I completely forgot what I was going to say. Oh, on the self-defense side of stuff, do you feel like, I know there's a lot of that stuff that gets marketed to women. What do you think about that? I don't feel good about women's self-defense stuff, most of the stuff that I see. I mean, I'm not like an expert, but I think what I've learned from jiu-jitsu, the very limited 2.5 years that I've had in it, is the mat time you can't replace. And so much, I guess it's better than nothing to kind of know concepts. And if you're teaching girls to like, this is a dangerous distance, like stay away from this person. I think that if you don't have mat time, if you've never had for example, I learned a half guard sweep. It took me like 7 months to get it for the first time because something wasn't working in it. And then I would try it on like a bigger person or a smaller person. And you go through all that and you're like, it just didn't work. And then you watch some kind of technique talk to a woman
that she's never done in another person. And you might not be able to because there's like an eye gouge or like a finger break or like something that you're never going to be able to like recreate. And then she's just going to go out into the world with people of different sizes and different variables with like no reps.
But confident. Sometimes.
I think the confident, because I mean, we all felt what it was like to be like an early 3-month white belt. We're like, I know things.
You feel like a god when you roll with a trial class person. You're like, oh, I am.
But even now you look back at that version of Dallas and you're like, what did I even know?
Lenny, when I got like 6 months in, Lenny walked up to me out of nowhere and was like, you know what, you would kill the version of you that started 6 months ago. And I was like, yeah, when you put it that way. He was like, and 6 months from now, you will kill this version of you even easier. And I still think about that.
I think about that even when I was an early blue belt to now. And I'm like, how did I compete in this division? I think about this before every competition. I'm like, well, Rachel, you were confident like 5 months ago going into a competition. And you might as well be confident now because you knew less then than you know now.
There we go. How often do you feel like you go through peaks and valleys in terms of training? Because at least for me, there will be like periods where it's like 2 or 3 months. And given oftentimes that's kind of correlated with like me not training a ton. But you'll be going into training and you're like, I feel like I'm getting worse when I come in here. And it'll be that way for 2 or 3 months. And then a switch flips and then you just feel like a god. And like, it's weird.
It's not just because of the breaks in the training, because I feel like I'm consistently training and I've noticed the peaks and valleys too. And then when I'm having a peak, I'm like, get used to it, Rachel, because it's about to go away.
What do you think causes that?
I think, at least for me, being aware of it, knowing that it was going to go away is because I feel like when you're working on new things that you haven't used before, you're going to mess it up. So if you're like doing a new guard and then what's the consequence of not being able to do it all the way is you're going to get past and then you're going to spend the rest of the round underneath somebody escaping. So I feel like this whole summer I've been working on different guards that I normally don't play and a lot of different things. And then I mess it up and then I'm past and the rest of the 4 minutes you're just sitting there escaping. And sure, maybe the escapes are getting better, but it doesn't feel like you're doing well. And then I know that sometimes when I roll and I'm playing like my A game that works on people in my own gym, then it's going to work on everybody everywhere. And that's where you're like, okay, this feels good. And when I start to do like any kind of thing that I'm not good at, I'm like, okay, this has a 60% chance of working. And if it doesn't, the rest of
Get ready to start fucking hip escaping.
Yeah, get ready to hip escape.
Oh my God.
Frame on your face and don't let them grab your head.
Just sit there and suffer. You're like, please just let this round end.
Yeah, I don't know if you feel that way, but I definitely am like, okay, I've learned this new sweep or I'm trying, or like I was messing around with Octopus Guard because Campbell was teaching it in his class. And Octopus Guard is like, if you mess that up, they're crushing you. And then you're crushed for like the rest of the...
And it's like you said earlier, it's one little detail. Like you screw up one little frame, one little detail, one little sequence.
The angle.
And then, yep.
I mean, even a pendulum sweep, even when I'm working with like new white belts and we're doing like flower or pendulum or whatever you want to call it sweep, I'm like, however perpendicular you think you are, go a little bit more because the whole thing about that is just the angle.
Out for it.
Yeah. I was like, okay, you're here. And I was like, you feel like you're in like a T shape, but you're not. You're like this. So you need to get I was like, kip a little more and then see if it works.
And then you're in a good spot.
Yeah. And then it just rocks over.
What was the moment for you when you were training jiu-jitsu where you were like, oh, this shit works?
7 months.
What specifically at 7 months were you like, this shit works?
I just remember not being on the bottom, like bottom mount for the first time. Like not being in any kind of bottom, like it wasn't bottom guard.
I didn't get pinned.
Yeah, I came up in a mount and I didn't even know what to do. Like I didn't know how to submit someone. I didn't know what to do. I just remember sitting on top and I was like, oh my God, I've never been here before. And that's so 7 months. And then that's what's crazy is like you'll see people, get their... I got my blue belt not too long after that, which is also why I'm like, how the heck did I compete? I was like, even if this is the other thing is like, I've asked some of the girls who are newer and they're like white belts and they're looking at competing. I'm like, okay, what submissions are you hitting in your rolls? Cause let's try to find like a pathway there. That's how I help like some of the newer people get ready for competitions is cause they're like, what's a game? I'm like, well, know how you're going to finish and then go from A to B. And then that's all you got to do. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, oh, I don't really finish anyone like in class. Okay, well, that's going to be real rough where someone's like trying to break your arm actively because they might be finishing in class, even if they're new white belts as well. Yeah. And they're going on with all the gusto into a competition. I mean, I did too, but.
I was going to say they're walking out there supremely confident just because they're fucking up the trial class person.
Yeah. I mean, that is a good thing because recently one of the white belts that I train with a lot, she was like, wow, like I worked with a new girl and she was like, and I was on top the whole time. And I was like, this is how it starts.
And then you slowly start getting used to being, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, thank God you didn't quit before now. Like, it's just so miserable before then.
Why do you think you didn't quit for those 7 months?
I just really liked it. I feel like the puzzle is fun. And then, yeah, I don't know. It just was a cool thing to do. I think the coolness of it, because my husband also did it, I was like, I feel like the coolness of it like got me to the point where it was like, okay, now it's not miserable anymore. Did
you two start training together?
Yep.
Same gym, same time.
Yeah. Well, he actually, cool. He picked the self-defense thing because the military tells you to do the self-defense stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, you really want to find this type of program because this is like the, I don't know, like real jiu-jitsu or something. But this is like also 15-year-old information. So,
yeah.
And I mean, who knows what it was back then. And so he was like, okay, we're going to go to this like, Gracie Combatives program. And then I'm like, they're teaching you to like, stop someone from choking you against a wall. It's like none of the same stuff. Yeah. It's like none of the same stuff that like you normally do in like a sports gym. And it's not bad. I know it's like, even Amon's like, it's like all valid stuff. It's just like, I don't use it the same or.
Yeah. You're never going to be pinned against the wall in a grappling competition.
Or I'm never going to be pinned. Yeah. And I'm hopefully never going to get pinned against the wall in a bathroom or something or anywhere either. Cause I never let someone get that close to me.
Yeah. Be aware.
Be aware. I think that's actually really important for women is just understanding distance. And then when you're doing self-defense stuff,
elaborate.
Well, like, I think we have an understanding of distance because we spar all the time. So we understand, like, if we can touch someone's shoulder, we could probably get to their legs. Like, we understand how close you can be for head control. You understand, like, if someone starts walking an angle on you, like, when you're standing, like, if someone can pull guard, you kind of understand if they control a sleeve, that if they grab your collar, they can collar drag you. You kind of understand all of these things. And if you don't have that, I've noticed even with, like, friends when they're starting to, I don't know. Like, I don't know why I have friends like this, but you're in a bar and they're starting to get in a heated conversation with strangers that you don't know anything about. And it's like they start moving towards each other. Why would you do that?
Yeah, it's like, wait a second.
You're
pulling
way too
your
close.
reaction time
You're
away.
way too close.
Girls probably don't do this nearly as much as guys, but like there have been at least 2 separate instances where guys have been, it's been weird spot. Okay.
Have you ever been in a fight? Okay, wait. No, you do your thing first and then I'll ask you later.
Oh, no. I was going to say, I've been in like 2 separate instances since starting jiu-jitsu where people have been started to get weird and immediately like your like reptilian brain starts looking at their collar. You're like, okay, I think I can strangle him. And like, and you start like analyzing how you can kill this person. You're like, all right, I think I can call like, okay, that'll hold up. If I grab their shirt, okay, if they do that, like you just start like.
Yeah. I do think, so when I worked at a bank, like when I was right out of college, they would always have us do robbery training because it was so common to get robbed at a bank.
Yeah.
And so they have like your manager walks up to you with like a stapler and demands money and like does like a whole thing. And it sounds cheesy, but then I got robbed when I worked at the bank. And it was exactly like it was, you didn't have to think about it because you had all those reps. And I think we probably think like that because you have hours and hours a week that you're doing this thing. So of course your brain jumps to that.
Yeah, it makes you feel like a sociopath.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You're like sitting there.
I mean, we might be. I don't know.
You gotta have some screws loose. I brought a friend of mine to jiu-jitsu last night and he like loved it. And I was like, for every one of these Colin, his name's Colin, like for every Colin, there's someone that walks in here and is like, walks out, doesn't come back and is like, what the fuck is wrong with those people?
Does he have like any kind of wrestling or anything like that?
No. Although, Colin, if you see this, I still don't believe you. Literally, first thing we did, so it was Amon's class. He got there a little late and we were doing this like hip riding thing where you're trying to take the back from it. And so I like get down. I'm, basically collapsed onto my shoulder. He kind of gets like this makeshift backpack on me. Like it's not really a seatbelt, but he's kind of like, he's like half pinning me. I'm like, all right, you ready? And he's like, yeah. And he was watching what Amon was doing. I was like, okay, cool. We slap, bump. First thing he does, he takes his left foot, butterfly hooks my leg and kicks it out. And I immediately, Caitlin looked over and was like, and we finished and I was like, okay, cool. And I got out and I was like, have you ever trained before? And he's like, no. I was like, did you wrestle? And he's like, no. And I was like, are you bullshitting me? Because I feel like you are.
Mike's girlfriend, Sydney?
Yes.
She took a class with Campbell. It was her second day. And I was like, I promise I'm not like blowing smoke up your ass. Like you're really good. Because she did an entire octopus guard sequence that finished with a head and arm guillotine, which normal people have a hard time finishing. And she finished it.
Yeah.
I mean, testament to Campbell's teaching, but it was like a several step process. And I'm like, I remember the first time I was doing half guard with someone and I didn't really even understand like what that was.
Had no comprehension.
And I'm like, you're doing octopus guard and you don't even understand like half guard or anything. And she did like the whole octopus guard sweep. And I'm like, I wasn't even like giving it to her. It was like legitimately, because octopus guard, if you have the right angle and like you move your head or whatever, like they just tip over. So it was like that. But even like the head and arm guillotine, I'm like, not easy to do, even if you know what you're doing. Some people just have a knack for it.
I agree. There's people that just have natural proclivities.
Yeah. I was like, Michael, come look at this. I was like,
like even inside of jiu-jitsu, like, have you ever just done something out of thin air and you're like, I don't know why I did that. I've never drilled that. I've never done that. Like, just snatch something.
I feel like because I have been doing the octopus guard, I did get like weird, and like I've been playing with butterfly. I'm sometimes getting random butterfly hooks in positions that I would not think that it would work, and then I kick it over, and I'm like, oh my god, it worked.
This is a miracle.
Yeah, and it feels like it's always like in a weird bad position too, where you're like you feel like you're holding a shoulder crunch you shouldn't hold or do something, and then you're like I wonder if, and you do it and you kick it, and you're like okay, or you tip them all the way over, and you're like okay.
Like, I don't know why that works.
Yeah, but that's I think what keeps you in it. Like if you're into that kind of stuff, where you're just like those surprises are like, and then when everyone's laughing, even when you do like the silly sweeps, when you're drilling and you know it's coming, me and Caitlin laugh all the time doing the silly sweeps.
What are the silly sweeps in jiu-jitsu?
Like the shin on shin sweeps, or like tripods, dummy sweeps and tripod sweeps. Like we know it's coming, and we're like, and we like land on our butt. We're like, it was so
you just
fun.
kick their leg, and you're like, this is so stupid.
Yeah, like just the act of almost falling is just like so funny to me.
It's ridiculous. I hit a toe hold one time, like for a period of time.
You are really into toe holds. This is a second toe hold story.
Here, okay, the reason I bring this one up is because that it makes the case. There was a period of time where I would smoke before I would go train, and so I was just like hanging out, and we were just drilling. Same thing, top half guard. The first time I ever hit a toe hold from top half guard, we were just fucking around, and his foot was hanging out there. I had never drilled this before. I don't even think anyone had explained it to me. I think I was still a white belt, and I was like, huh. And I reached out, grabbed his foot, reached around, finished the toe hold, and they tapped, and I was like, I don't know where that came from. Okay, anyways, back to it. But no, toe holds, and wrist locks.
Have you done them on anyone who does either butterfly ashi, or I guess like outside De La Hiva, you probably could too.
Outside De La Hiva, you can. Butterfly ashi, no.
So butterfly ashi on not the butterfly ashi side, but the other hook that like hangs
if they leave
off.
it, yeah.
Yeah, but everyone does. I know I like have drilled it a bunch, and like my toe always hangs out, and now like Brandon just showed everybody how to attack it, so now everyone reaches down and like kind of makes me honest about it. But
if that thing stays floating out there, yeah, you just kind of snatch it. It's like that video of Gianni where he just blew that guy's knee apart.
Oh my god. I've not seen it, but that sounds legitimate. Because it's an inverted heel hook, theoretically, is what people say it is, I think.
Yes. I forget the exact setup for Gianni's, but I think the Emerald City Invitational or something like that. And there's a video of it where the guy's foot's just kind of hanging out, and you literally just see Gianni drop his arm back, catch it, and from standing, and the dude just kind of slumps down and is like,
I want to get more. I need to do more toe holds and knee bars. I just don't play with, because yeah.
Knee bars are fun.
You know who was hitting a bunch of knee bars? Homer. For a long time. Like now I guess he's like into heel hooks and other things, but I remember there was a minute where like blue belt Homer was like knee barring everybody.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, he's still a blue belt, but like I just early blue belt
just
Homer.
Being a demon.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, I know that like sometimes I just trying to make sure that I'm keeping up with everybody, where I'm like, okay, they have this many months ahead of me, and at this many months, he was already hitting a bunch of knee bars, so I got to too. Like,
so therefore, I have to do it to show him.
Therefore, I have to, yeah. Well, not better. Just like I feel like I'm like, okay, at this stage, with the amount of time I have training, and he's like, doing all his things. I'm like, I should be doing this stuff too. There's no reason not to.
It's just whatever rabbit hole people go down.
Yeah, I guess it also depends on who you're playing with and like rolling with and stuff and what comes up.
You get accustomed to what they give you and have their reaction so you can attack it.
Yeah, if someone's always like butterfly oshing you, of course you want to get like an extra thing to shut it down. I think that's also how you get better is normally we're all shutting down each other's stuff. So it's dependent on your training partners. Because I know that I definitely feel like Tiffany's guard passing is great. Also, my guard was great. Like
because you're like, all right, I got to shut this shit down. I'm tired of getting passed.
Yeah, I'm tired of getting passed. Okay, I can do this. Okay, she always does this. How can I stop this? And then like you do that with different training partners, or I'm like, oh, this person always does this. Or if I'm always like occasionally like certain people will tripod pass me all the time. I'm like, okay, I've learned that when I'm tripod passing, if my head's in the wrong position, it doesn't work. So I push their head out of position.
You're like, get that head over.
Get it out of the way.
The most infuriating thing is then someone is going to do something, Austin, and you can't stop it. Every time I train with Austin, he winds up getting that overhook, like that clamp, and then using that to sweep me. And I will literally go into a round and I'm like, don't let him get it. Don't let him get it. Don't let him get it. And I'm like digging my arm, and then he'll like
do you leave it there, or is he just good at getting it?
He's just good at getting it because he'll catch it from everywhere. Like I'll try and body lock, and I'll be like locked down, And it's like he just knows how to maneuver his hips in a way that creates just a little bit of space. And you feel his hand start to get in there and you're like, oh no. But if you just try and bail out and you rip this, you just leave your head and arm hanging out there. And then
this feels like a role that you should probably film, because I bet you'll catch where you went wrong before that. There's certain things that
should do that.
Yeah, there are certain roles that I do that, and when I'm like, okay, I keep getting submitted in like this one fashion. Sometimes I'm like, I really need to film that and take a look at it, because I'll realize I'm like, okay, this started happening even earlier than I thought it was happening. And
you see where you fucked up here, but you didn't realize you fucked up until 3 steps down the line.
Like you can't get like here's a really dumb example, but like I was getting knee cut on by a bunch of people from Brazilian schools, like whether it was like in competition or whatever, but they have a different style of knee cut than the way that we've learned it. They like to go up the middle, like up the, like almost like up the sternum. Because you know how we have kind of like our knee cut.
Oh, like kind of jump into it with their knee?
Yes. Yeah. So they have a different style. And I'm like, we do a lot of forced de la Riva knee cuts and other stuff. So people on your own school aren't playing the same way.
Like we do like a slower knee cut. It's not like a dive into it.
Yeah. They're like on the side and like, but you can knee cut someone if you split them with the middle. This is also how I pass people with bad shin on shin too, is I just get an underhook and I just like go through the middle.
And dive. Okay.
Yeah. Because I know it works. If you have the underhook, if not, you're going to end up with that egg leg and oshi. If they're good to know what they're doing. Yeah. But I feel like this is like one of those things that I learned from like playing with other people. I was like, okay, but I can't let them get there. So I'm like, okay, I know that if it was someone from my school and they were going in that position, they probably wouldn't end up knee cutting on me. But if someone who knows how to do that kind of knee cut, I'm like, I just can't even let them get that close. I can't let them get my collar at all. I can't let them. And then that's like so many steps before where I lost it. Where you see you're getting knee cut all the time, but it's like way before that, you let them just touch your collar. I'm like, why would you let them do that? Like you let them put their knee on your sternum. Why would you let them get that close?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
I need to film this.
Yeah. So you'll see like probably, I think like grips and other things where you're like, okay, well, how did that fall apart? Also, if you're doing your thing, they can't get to their thing either.
Yeah, that's true. If you just beat them to.
Yeah. Because I have like I feel like my reverse de la Riva for a really long time was just waiting for someone to knee cut on me. Because I didn't have anything from there. Like I couldn't do a kiss of the dragon. I couldn't do any kind of sweeps. Okay. I couldn't lever sweep. I don't know how.
Lever.
Yeah. Like I couldn't do any of the things that you're supposed to do from reverse de la Riva. So if someone got there on me, whether they were good at it or not, they were going to pass me. But if you have things there and then one of the things that I was doing and cheating, instead of like learning a whole reverse de la Riva, everything, I was like, okay, I don't have time before my competition. I would just re-guard into something that I could do. So I learned how to like go from like reverse de la Riva to a close guard, like different steps that I could like go into a close guard.
Basically bail out. And
reset. Bail out. Okay. Yeah. Or like, frame on them and then hip escape and like almost like a hip heist and get out and re-pull a guard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, why play the thing if you're, or spend the time to learn how to do it. But if you're like, okay, this is really not, for a really long time, I couldn't lever sweep. Only recently have I figured out how to lever sweep.
Really?
I think it's also because I have long legs and like, I feel like that was a thing. And then also, I don't know, just like the hip positioning, I kind of knew all of the things to do it, but for some reason I couldn't make it work. And I'm realizing I was keeping my knees to my chest and I really it's almost like you extend a little bit to do it.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah.
I remember Brandon, the one tournament I did, Brandon showed a lever sweep like right before. And I was just like, it just clicked. And then literally in the tournament, he yelled lever. And I was like, oh, okay. He just took the guy right over. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit, this is cool.
Only recently has that worked for me. And I completely see it now. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. But I think what it was is my instinct is to always keep my knees to my chest and keep that space closed. And in that one, you almost are kind of you're almost pushing away. You're not, but like your knees are almost to the sky and like going to the left.
Yeah, like it feels like if you're not tight with the sweep, you're going to give them something.
Yes. I mean, even think of like a regular reverse de la Riva, like say they're like up and standing and you have a reverse de la Riva on them. Mm-hmm. If you're dropping that lever sweep or like sweeping them that way, you almost actually kind of lose your de la Riva hook and like kind of drop it and go that way. Yeah. And that's something I never did. I would just like stay with like the legs crossed, like reinforce and then try to like tilt them and it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Because like physics, like obviously it didn't work. Like now in retrospect, I'm like, what the hell, man?
It's weird how a bunch of people, I'm not going to speak for everyone. I bet most people in Honesty Jiu Jitsu did not do particularly well in physics class or take physics class myself because they were too dumb myself.
Wait, I'm not.
And then still you're sitting there like, well, duh, you have to get down to the end of it and you just start rattling off shit.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I try to coach a lot just like because I feel like it's good for my development. If I can like say it out loud and why it works, then I think I actually know how it works. And so sometimes I'll like coach white belts and when I see it, I'm like, oh, I see where this is going on because physically I see it on two other people. I think that's also why I like Lachlan Giles is like sub-meta is it'll put up like which one's correct. Like it's like a picture of A and B, and the arm or the leg will be in a different position.
I've never looked at this. That sounds really, it's like a quiz.
Yeah, I mean, I like it feels, it's just like any kind of like online educational. I feel like it's one of those like regular platforms that you can like make into any website. And it's like that same format where it's like video, and then you could do a quiz and it's like A and B. And he'll talk about like how you actually want them to be down here instead of up here. And it'll be a picture of the before and after. And that has helped me too, because when I'm looking at somebody, I can see what's wrong from like afar.
Yeah.
Versus when you're in it, like you can't always see or like feel it or whatever. But when you see it on another person, you're like, okay, their leg's in the wrong position.
You're like, well, duh, of course it didn't work. And then you can sit there and look at it. What were you saying earlier about fights?
Oh man, I don't remember. How many actual fights have you been in, like real life? Me either.
No, I've never like squared up with someone and been in a fight. I've been in one fight in college, and it was because I wasn't even in it. I basically pulled a buddy of mine out of it because there was a security guard. There's a bar in Auburn, Alabama. I don't know if it's still there, called Bourbon. And most of the bar is like upstairs.
Yeah.
And to get down, there's like a flight of stairs, a landing, and then another flight of stairs. And the number of bouncers that I saw yeet motherfuckers down that first flight of stairs. He like got into a fight over something, and I like ran up and just like grabbed him. I was like, all right, what are we doing? Like, I'm not.
And this is before like you knew anything. You knew back control.
I knew nothing. Okay. I just ran up and like literally, I mean, knowing what I know now is like a long arm, short arm. And I was like, get the fuck off. Like, you're about to get thrown down the stairs, and I don't want you to get fucked up. But
I'm a de-escalator, so I don't think I've ever been. I'm always like, what are you doing? Why are you yelling at people? We don't know.
I had a video on TikTok where a bunch of people were like, this guy's a beta male. He doesn't fight people. I was like, dude, the value proposition with getting into a street fight is terrible. Best case scenario.
Carry state, like right to carry state.
Exactly. Like, you get into a fight with someone. There's a million and one ways that it can go wrong. It's like, that guy disrespected me. Dude, he's living in a trailer park. Yeah, who gives a shit if he disrespects you?
We don't care about his opinion.
Yeah, he's got 7 junked out cars in his front lawn. Like,
and women aren't even safe, because I got a concealed permit like years ago, when I think they can still do them, but now you don't really need them, I guess, in Georgia.
No.
Yeah, but like when we first moved here 8 years ago, I had gotten one. And like if you look at the like where you're signing in to get your fingerprinting done and all that kind of stuff, the list of women getting the permit, it was all women. It was like you go through it and there's like 20 women's names. And I'm like, there was not a single dude's name on this list except Lucas, because like we went and got ours at the same time.
It does not compute to me why more women don't have it. It's like, it is. I understand a lot of women are scared of guns, rightfully so. You should be a little bit scared. That is the great equalizer.
Yeah.
Some dude's being a fucking creep and tries to like force himself on you. Cool, bro. Bang. Problem gone.
It's hard. I don't carry often. I know that like you're supposed to and everything, but I don't go to the range enough to feel comfortable. I also hate when a gun jams. Like,
Glock. Don't have to worry about it.
I think I'm fine now because I'm a lot stronger and stuff, but especially like when I was in college and stuff and I would like go shooting, I'd be like, it would just be so bad if it got jammed. Like I feel like this is a real conversation with like a real woman though, because I'm like, it pinches your fingers, it does all the things. So like that I wasn't comfortable with. And then you don't want to put it in your purse because you're not always on your purse. So I'm not going to go to a party and like be hanging out. I do feel better with fanny packs. I like that fanny pack sort of thing, or like the crossbodies, because that feels like I might be able to do it more. But then, I mean, as the places that you would do it at, like no one's going to let you bring a fanny pack into a festival that's not like clear and see-through. Yeah. So like all the places that you'd, I don't know, want one. And then drinking, like you don't necessarily want a firearm when you're drinking for liability. So there's like been a lot of, I mean, I have a husband, so I feel, and like he's like when he can, he like carries and other stuff. So I feel good with that. But like, I just know myself. You know what also is really hard? I would go on runs to downtown by myself. I know. But it'd be at like a time where there's like really no other people. Like I would go down there and there's like no.
I think that's more dangerous. I think you're safer when there's a lot of people.
I guess that's true. That's true. But I would go and run. And I didn't feel like I had any interactions with anybody, and I was a pretty decent runner. But I think that women's running clothing is not conducive to wearing anything.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that there is like, if you wore like, I'm surprised no one has designed this, but like one of those like, because it needs to be lightweight.
Yes.
But like, you know how like there's like the string scrunchy thing, so it's like the right amount of like baggy or like whatever. I feel like it needs to be something like that where it's like baggy and it can hide it, because I've had the thing that you like strap to your body and I'm like, there's like a whole imprint on the front of you that looks like a gun. So I don't know, like if someone can design. I feel like there's enough like things that you can do with like clothing that maybe someone can design some kind of. And then when it's warmer, you don't want to be running in like windbreaker fabric when it's like 87 degrees outside.
Yeah,
like
now
I don't
you're
know.
pouring sweat. You're like, this is just not comfortable.
Yeah. So I don't know how people do that. Like there's a couple times that I did it and I would like do the neoprene strap to your body thing and then do like a big baggy shirt.
Okay. Yeah, that's
like fat kid at summer camp, like running down the street. I don't know.
I mean, even if I'm trying to think, like even a lot of guys stuff, it's not like if you're going to carry, you have to have like a tiny gun if you don't want to like imprint, because like you'll see some people
like in the back, like, or even, I don't even know how the way Lucas's body is hides it well. But even when he started losing weight, it didn't hide as well.
Yeah. It's like if you're wearing pants and you like concealed carry it in the pants, it's like, well, now you've got to wear like pants that are basically just baggy as hell.
Long enough shirt, because every time you go like this,
it's going to pop up.
Yeah. I think that's part of trying to figure out how to carry is like being able to wear the correct clothing, have the correct things. Cause I'm like, I'm not going to be that person who has a purse, leaves it alone. Someone's like little kid goes into my purse while I'm like, you know what I mean? Like I need to have that thing on me like all the time.
And it doesn't even have to be a little kid. I know a good friend of mine. He was at, so he's got a gun at his house and he has a couple of guns in a couple different places because he likes guns. He's a firearm enthusiast. I think they were drinking or something and he had one of those guns stashed. Some idiot that was over at his place found it and has zero respect for a gun and basically just started like not spraying, like pulling the trigger, but was like, oh, like what the fuck is this doing? And like moving it around and everyone there's like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like that's
this, I believe 100%, not just because people are idiots, but I don't know if you've ever brought like a new person to the shooting range.
Yep.
And like they literally go, hey. And they like look at you while they're pointing, and then you like have to like put it down. But I'm like, this on more than one occasion has happened where we're like, okay, when you turn to talk to me, I need you to like lay it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And then like let go of everything and then turn and talk to me. Cause they're just dumb. Like they just don't. Is that a Windex bottle? Like
I was about to say, like this thing kills people. Like this will end someone's life. I took a pistol class one time and a guy had a straight on meltdown. Like had like a panic attack, like curled up in the bay. Like and people's reactions to guns is strange because some people zero respect for it and are just like, hey, what do you think I should do with this? And you're like, dude, you're going to kill someone in an accident. And then some people, you know.
Overly scared. Like if you touch it, it's going to go off. And it's like, well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not with some of the safety features where you have to like hold the back of it and do all the things. Like I can barely sometimes do the thing.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. I feel like I'm stronger. My grips and stuff are definitely better from Jiu Jitsu. But before that was an issue. It was just like being able to do the slide and having like weak fingers and things like that.
I was going to say, like, if you have to rack it, like that's, it's not easy. I've never got my hand stuck, again, knock on wood. I've never got my hand jammed into it, but I've had a bunch of people tell me that, like, with a Glock, they've gotten their fingers stuck in it, like, while they're trying to, like,
My dad had some kind of, I don't even know what it is. Lucas could probably tell you what it is. He had 2 different guns that I grew up, like, in high school going to the range with him. And I'd shoot them and they would bite my hands. Like whatever, you know what I mean? Like the way that the slide went, it would just like, and then it would nick you and then you'd bleed because it like would rip skin off.
Because it's your hand too and your hand bleeds like crazy.
Yeah. And like, you know how like so many people, they'll like shoot a 22 or something to get used to like not jerking, not yanking. And I'm like, imagine the PTSD I have from shooting a gun that would like rip my skin off. And I'm like sitting there trying to do something at the range. I haven't gone in a really long time. I'm not bad like when I go with Lucas. So I learned that even Lucas's gun, which is way too, he has like a 1911 or one of his guns is a 1911. And I'm like, it's way too heavy for me to be like reliably using and it's like way bigger, all the things. But I was like, this feels so comfortable to shoot compared to the stupid little gun that would slap my hands and then rip my skin off.
And then you're sitting there like, why the fuck am I doing this?
Why am I doing this? Yeah, I hated it. Now I'm like, I grew up with a decent, but then I grew up in California, so no one carries guns. That was actually really hard to get used to, was Lucas walking around with it. I was like, oh my God. And he's like, Rachel, this is a state where this is okay. Like when we lived in Florida and in Georgia.
Is Lucas from California?
He's from Florida.
Okay.
So he was in the military in California. That's how we met. But I grew up in California like my whole life. And then I met Lucas and then there's a bug. And then I met Lucas in California. He stayed there for 8 years through his like being stationed there. After he got out, he went to school there. Then we were like, let's try Florida. And then we did that for 2 years, hated it, and then came up here and we've been here for 8 years.
Okay.
And we're vampires, so that explains our age.
Vampires.
Yeah, I know.
What is being married to someone in the military like?
I actually married him after he got out of the military because he went through his first marriage in the military, as one does.
It's a prerequisite.
Yeah.
Well, and he was a Marine, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you got to get married at 18.
Yeah, that's the joke. They like don't promote you unless you have your first divorce.
Good God. Isn't there something that like incentivizes people in the military to get married younger or something?
Yeah, so he did it. I mean, this is what he tells me. But I don't think he would have gotten married if he wasn't in the military because they pay you more base housing allowance. So there's a couple factors. He didn't want to live in the barracks. If you're married, you don't have to live in the barracks. You're 19, like basically living in a house where they tell you like where to clean. It's like a dorm for men. And then like they have like field days and like you can't have alcohol in your fridge and like certain things if you're under 21. But if you just lived in an apartment and someone bought you alcohol, it's your own space. Like no one's going to come and like search your house. So he didn't want to live in the barracks. One of his friends was already in the military and said, you need to be married when you go in or else you're going to be stuck in the barracks. You get paid so much more. Like the amount that he made versus the base housing allowance in California, it was like his was like 30% of his paycheck was his actual pay, and then the other 60% was for being married. So technically, the person that they're married to is making more than the person who actually committed themselves to the service, if you think about it. Yeah, it's not probably the correct way to look at it, but I'm like, when we were looking at it, why wouldn't you at 19 years old? So he also was in a real relationship. So it was like his girlfriend. He didn't want to break up with her. He's like, well, you can just move here and then we'll both have health insurance and like all these things. So I don't think he would have married her if it wasn't like, okay, I don't want to break up with my girlfriend. He didn't have to, but like I could bring her with me and we could have our own apartment and I'll get paid more. And if I die, then she gets all the benefits and like life insurance and stuff.
Like all the incentives are there.
Yeah. They also treat you in my experience, they don't treat you well if you're like not married to somebody because you have no information. So like if you're married, you get to go to all the meetings, like when they're deployed. Otherwise, you're just a girlfriend who like doesn't know what's going on. Have to get it from a married person who's like, some of those women are crazy. like I'm like, she was like 19 and she had nothing going on. She's like, yeah, I'll get married and then like go out there. And then you meet some of these people and she was like, yeah, he proposed to 3 other people before me. This wasn't really like, this isn't like trash talking. This was like a real experience from like 2008 was like someone like her husband had proposed to like 3 other people on the same leave and then proposed to her. And then she was like, yes, because she wanted to move to
on the same leave.
On the same leave.
Oh my God. He just has a ring. He rented a ring and he's like, will you? No. Will you? No. Will you? No. Will you? Hell yeah. She said, yes, I'm getting married. That's crazy.
I thought it was crazy too. And they lived in my apartment complex.
And like, they both thought that was just completely normal.
Lucas and I still look back at it and we're like, what a time to have.
A fever dream.
Yeah, it really though. I mean, like the between like the wars and then that happening and then just like everything that was going on, I was like, that's so crazy. So that was like what our experience was with it. And then so we were like, why don't we just wait till you get out? So
were you dating when he got deployed?
I was lucky. He deployed before I met him.
Okay.
And then he was supposed to get deployed one more time, but he switched about the time he met me. He thought I was going to break up with him. I didn't know that till later. I realized this after.
Fucked up.
Yeah, I was like in school and like doing other stuff. So I was getting my useless degree in history. So because I was busy doing that, I was like, I'm not going to like go around dating dudes. Like he was like, hey, like, we were like, he had met me like and 3 weeks later, he was like, I might be getting deployed like later. I'm like, okay. I like didn't care. I was like, I was going to go to school. It wasn't going to change anything I was doing. And then he was like, oh, is that okay? I was like, yeah, I don't care. But he was like, I think legitimately worried like I was going to break up with him or something. And then he moved to doing like an on-base job.
How many people do you think would have broken up with their boyfriend if they had known them for a month and then I don't know how long?
A lot.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's a realistic a realistic expectation.
In retrospect, I feel like I don't know if it's like overly romanticized or whatever, but when I was younger, like I didn't mind doing like a long distance relationship or like any of that kind of stuff. But now that I'm older and I look back, like because I have nieces who are that age and stuff now dating, I'm like, yeah, why would you at 21 commit to somebody who's not even there? Like, why would you do that?
They're halfway around the world. You probably can barely talk to them.
Yeah. Like, you're going to do that like once or twice a week. And I'm like, you like them. You don't even really know them. Like, you're going to stop yourself from meeting other people that are actually there. Like, it's crazy now that I think about it in retrospect. But at the time, I didn't really think anything of it.
I don't know what the divorce rate or the breakup rate is in the military, but I feel like it's sky high.
I think there was like 30 dudes. I don't know what the organization of, I feel like there's like 30 guys. I'm going to say unit, but maybe it wasn't a unit and they have like a different classification.
Some dork will watch this video. Yes. Some TikTok dork will be like, actually the technical vernacular for when we're discussing a military, and it's like, hey, dude,
yeah. And the Marine Corps and the Army has different laws and rules and blah, blah, blah. But there's like 30 dudes that Lucas had been deployed with and other things. And of all the 30 guys, maybe it wasn't 30, it was like 30 that were married. Lucas and I are still together and like 2 other couples.
Oh, good. So 90%.
It was a huge amount. Yeah. And then we actually, because of how old we are now, we're like mid to late 30s, because Lucas is late 30s. We have a huge chunk of friends too who like had been married for more than 10 years and are divorcing now. And that was crazy. Because like you think you get past like the first 7 years or something, you're like, okay, it's going to be fine. And then like now I'm like, okay, there's like the second phase of like everybody getting divorced.
My parents split after 35 years.
I mean, wouldn't you just like go out and look at these streets and be like, maybe we're going to get back together? I don't know.
Peek your head out. You're like, never mind. We're back in here.
That's me and Lucas. Like every time we get in a fight, we remind each other, like everything out there sucks too. So we suck. So we're going to go through this together.
I feel like I saw one of you two posted something. I think it was you. And it was like looking at people dating now. And it was feeling like you got on the final chopper out of Vietnam.
It's what it feels like.
I think you posted that on your Instagram at some point because I remember seeing that. And I was like, that's fucking funny.
I mean, we were so lucky that when we met, because it's so long ago, there was only Hot or Not and Plenty of Fish. And eHarmony was something everyone made fun of. And now like everything is like a dating app of some sort.
I was going to say, now there's like 4 tiers of dating apps. Like you can go.
And like, that's the only way people meet each other these days. I don't even think people know how to really have a conversation. Or at least Gen Zers. I mean, I can't really speak for our generation, but.
I don't think we're in the same generation. I'm like the cutoff year between millennial and Gen Z, apparently. Okay. Like some of them say it's 96 and some of them say it's 97.
Okay.
But no, I think you're right. I think a lot of people do not know how to have a conversation in public.
I'm bad. I mean, I even think about for my friends who have to date, like the other day I had to meet a bunch of people that I didn't know. They're all girls, like whatever. And we're sitting in a meeting. I'm like, God, I hate meeting new people because it's almost exhausting. Everyone's going to be like, I never want to meet this bitch. I'm like, no. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like it's exhausting to like meet new people. You have to like, you're listening. I talk really fast and get caught up in the things I'm saying. I'm like, okay, I'm listening, taking this in. I'm going to remember this person's name and all this stuff. And you're doing that with a new person who might want to sleep with you. That's what the entire dating process is like.
Probably wants
and I'm
to.
like, yeah. And I'm like, if I think it's miserable meeting new people, only like having to like meet someone, you're like, God, I got to go out and do this. I get why people hate dating. Maybe it's not like that for you. Maybe you're like, yeah, I get to really hang out with this girl that I think is cute. I don't know.
It depends. You can tell very quickly on a date if it's worthwhile or not, I think.
Do you like, I'm like, you're a young person. How do people meet? Like, do you just like decide on a place, then you take them out bowling or what are you doing?
I'm seeing someone now. So okay. I'm seeing someone.
But before?
Literally over 80% of it was Hinge.
Okay.
Just because it's like, especially if you do jiu-jitsu, I work on the weekend. So like Saturday and Sunday I'm working. I'd really prefer to not go out and get drunk on Friday or Saturday and then be hungover sitting in a neighborhood trying to sell stuff.
Yeah.
Like you feel like shit, whatever. So I'm like, I really don't want to do that. None of my friends really like go out like that. And so it was all Hinge and literally it was like, I would only do drinks on a first date. Cause it's like, I'm not taking some girl to dinner. I'm locked into an hour at least. I'm paying a lot of money for someone that I don't even know if I like. Yep. Like the number of people that you meet and like you'll go out with them and very early on you're like, oh, this isn't.
I've said this on my podcast, but I was like, my worst date was like a 3-part date this guy planned. And it was like, I was 25 seconds into it where I was like, I don't want to be with this person anymore.
Yeah.
He was just really into sports. It was like, he had like, he was almost, no, I'm not going to say that because it's like he was just.
Say it.
He was almost like maybe autistic. I don't know. Like,
oh yeah.
But I couldn't tell if it was like that. But he was just like one of these. He had like every sports stat for like minor league, college, and like every sport.
And he's talking to you about this on a date?
On a date.
Yeah, that's a bad play, sir.
To be fair, we met because we both did intramural sports. So he was like, oh, you like sports. I played sports. He played sports. And then we sat down and like, okay, we're going to talk. It's just like talking about jiu-jitsu, but then you realize like you're talking to Campbell about jiu-jitsu.
And you're like, oh my God, this guy likes jiu-jitsu a lot more than I do.
Yeah, this is a different level. Like I watch instructionals, but he watches all the matches and all of the instructionals, know whose people are. And like, it's just like a different level of like interest in the thing.
Has Campbell ever described to you what his note-taking process is for jiu-jitsu instructionals?
No, but I've seen his Instagram stories. And this is where I'm like, we're different people.
Okay. Campbell goes, this is how I study. I sit down. Fuck. Please work. Please. Okay. Campbell goes, this is how I study jiu-jitsu. I will watch chapter 1 of an instructional. I'll take my notebook and I'll summarize everything in there, start to finish. Hey, look, these are all the key details. These are the core concepts, whatever. I will watch chapter 2. After I watch chapter 2, I will go to a different page in my notebook. I will write down everything from chapter 1, all of the core concepts, all of the key takeaways, the details, and then I will do chapter 2. And then I go to the 3rd chapter of the instructional, and I will rewrite all of 1, all of 2, and 3. And he goes, and I will do that until I cannot remember the stuff from 1. And then I go back and start over. He's like, that's how I study. And I was like, damn, you're going to get really good at this shit. And no wonder he's really fucking good at this shit.
I wonder sometimes, because I'm the type of person when I was a kid, I used to like have a really beautiful outline because we used to have to outline like middle school. Mm-hmm. All my teachers made us do outlines. I had it like color coded, highlighted, all that kind of stuff. But that actual process, I never really learned. I never looked back at it. I think I learned during the process of doing the outline, but I never used the outline to study because I already knew it after I had written it. And so then I learned, I'm like, this actually isn't incredibly necessary because I could learn the exact same thing with a lot less So I had to learn when I was in college and my time was more limited. I was like, you can't feel the need to do all these extra steps because you don't actually need them. You just feel like you need to do it to be complete.
Yeah.
So sometimes I wonder, I'm like, do you learn that way? Or is it just like you feel like you have to do those steps to be complete? Just because that's my experience with it is like, I can be more concise with my study methods because I didn't actually need to do all that.
I will say, I think there's something to like the going back and doing the repetition side of it.
Yeah.
The closest I can relate that to is I went through a phase where I would study chess a bunch. And so it was like the same thing. Like I would go through and do all these drills for like whatever this particular sequence. And then I would go to stage 2 and do that. And like at the end of like 3 or 4 of them, I would go back and do somewhat similar of a concept. Like this was all online. So it was not like handwriting stuff down. But I think just like searing that into your brain, I think there's probably something to
I will say something similar that I do in that kind of fashion is I memorize lines that way. So if I have like a lot of dialogue that I have to memorize for auditions and stuff, I'm also an actor. I don't think I mentioned that.
I didn't mention that either.
I'm an unemployed actor who doesn't book that many things. But when I do audition for things and I have a lot of dialogue, it'll be like, say there's like 10 sentences. I'll do the first sentence and then I'll do the first sentence and the second sentence. And then I'll keep going till I mess up. And then I have to start from the first sentence and go through. And then when I'm recording auditions, Lucas also will not let me just like stop and start over. We actually like go through even if I mess up and we know we can't use a take because I get in the habit of stopping halfway through instead of going all the way through the entire take.
What is the most soul-sucking part of being an actor?
I think just like the auditions are really rough because I think I looked at my, and this, I'm sure some of them fall off, but I think I looked at my Actors Access, which is where we get all of our notifications. And I've had something like 900 auditions, like ever. And the amount of like actual legitimate like television series bookings I've had is less than 6.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I've had quite a bit of like commercials. I think I probably over the years, like maybe 25 commercials or 30 commercials or something like that. And like, that's not even including like the print ads, but like the actual, if that many bookings to like 900 times, people were like, no. And that's just me. I think sometimes, and also we have a lot of auditions in Atlanta. Some of my friends would only audition like twice a year in California, but they'd book one of them. We'll audition sometimes. Like there was a point when I first moved here that I was auditioning like 5 times a week and not booking anything. And sometimes I don't even think that they're looking because we are in a place where everyone watches the auditions like on tape. So if they collect tapes, I don't even know if they're watching all 40 tapes. If they're just like, oh, wait, hit the one that I want to cast. And then they just don't. So who knows if anyone's even watching them. We can't see if it's like watched or not. Yeah.
How long is an audition?
It depends. You could have one line. A lot of them are, excuse me, sir. That's it.
That's the audition?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Have a seat. The doctor will see you now.
What are they expecting to get out of seeing someone say 4 words?
I think they just like look to see. You're practically an extra when it's like one line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you get paid for that? Like if you get cast in that?
Yeah. I think like day rate, if you like SAG, all this stuff is like, you can look it up online, but I feel like a SAG day rate, it's like about $1,000, maybe after like you pay taxes and you pay your agent and you walk with like less than 600, maybe. But yeah, that's like a one day. And then if you work like a week, there's a certain rate for that. I think it's like 3,500 or something like that. It changes like depending on like whether it's made for TV or if it's like a series or some series like that go on a network versus streaming pay. So those like aren't even like accurate numbers which is so annoying. Everyone will be like, just look at the SAG rates. It's like this table that makes no sense.
And you're like, that's great. I'm trying.
Like, honestly, if like I got underpaid or overpaid, I wouldn't even know. Like, hopefully my agents do. Cause like, and that's like not great business stuff. But honestly, if you look at the table, I'm like, I don't know.
Weren't you saying something about how like SAG basically has like an army of attorneys that they'll try and like make sure you're not getting screwed over with people using your likeness and whatever? Cause we were talking about like the AI thing at y'all's place. I think after I
know that if you have an issue with like a production that you did, you can file a claim for it. So I had a friend who did an audition and it was supposed to be like a promo for like a TV show. And that's different. A promo for a TV show is different than like a commercial product, like for a water or Gatorade. Like they look at all these things as like different things. So it was supposed to be a promo for a TV show. And then it was like super sketchy because we had to like film him like drumming in like a subway type of thing. And like, you're not supposed to, they've made all these rules against like us having to film and produce things, but it was like the other people that were being asked to do it were like influencers. So it was like a bunch of like influencers and then like some SAG actors and they were making the project SAG. And then this thing played during the Super Bowl. Yeah, I know. So he filed.
Oh my God. Like they paid $1 million something or multiple millions of dollars just for the time slot.
Yeah.
Just for holy shit.
And normally when you audition for that, for a Super Bowl, because I've auditioned for things that had a Super Bowl slot, it would say like, hey, this is like planning. This is a Super Bowl spot. Like this is what this is. This one was just like, this is just a TV promo. And then I think like to get paid for the way that it was, because it wasn't even like a principal role, it was like a stunt or something. I don't know like what they were counting it as, but it was like, I think you got paid like $500-$600 for this stupid thing. And I was like, you shouldn't even do it because they can't ask you. Like you can get like fined for like playing drums in the subway without a permit. Like, because we were up in New York and like all that kind of stuff. And so that was like crazy to me. And then that he filed a claim and he did get paid for that. But all the influencers who are not SAG, and then they got hosed. Yeah. Well, all they got to do is like tell everybody like, hey, like my thing showed during the Super Bowl. Like, look, I was playing during the Super Bowl. And they took their money and like, I guess maybe, I don't know, make a bunch of money on like Instagram or something. But
probably not, because if they put that up there, then the company that licensed or ran it in the Super Bowl probably is like, we have it licensed. Oh, that's a copyright strike. We own the IP on that.
I've never thought it was fair. Like I had the exact same, I don't know if I told you this, but like I had a campaign for like for an ad. And then my friend had the exact same campaign, but the influencer version. And we got paid the same amount. And the difference was like, I got paid for working it that day, like the fitting, I think the COVID test, because it was like during all that kind of stuff. And I got paid for that. And then she had to like produce like 3 content pieces. So she had to like film, edit, be in it, submit it, have them approve 3 different pieces that were going to be ran in perpetuity. They were just like, okay, we're going to take this in perpetuity. Mine was going to be like, you work the day, and because it's a SAG commercial, they're going to like negotiate usage. So it could be 3 months or 6 months or a year or however they want to run the campaign. They ended up not using my cut. Like I ended up not being in it because it was a very long commercial and they only had like a 15 and a 30-second spot, and they probably filmed like a 3-minute like long story commercial. And so I ended up not being in it. Like 2 of my friends worked it too, and they were completely cut out as well. So I got paid this exact same amount for it to not even be out in the world as she got paid to do all that work. And have them running it in perpetuity. I mean, it's like a lot of campaigns, including that one. I don't think they're really going to need it longer than in perpetuity. Like another example of this is if you work for Nintendo and they're always coming out with new technology things, like you're not going to be running like an ad for like a 1996 Nintendo like 10 years later. Yeah. So the in perpetuity doesn't matter as much, but still like it's kind of nice to just like at least demand like a 5-year limit or like a 4-year. Because I have a friend who did stock photography, and she ended up being an executive at like a studio later, like way later. But when she was younger, she did like a stock photography shoot for like, I think like the post office, and like they're still using her on flyers. And her friend, like all of her friends, like in her like now big kid job, like 20 years later, are still like, hey, we saw you at the post office or UPS. I don't remember. It was like something like that. And it's just like the girl.
She still get paid for that?
No, she got paid like one time for in perpetuity.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was like a $1,500 like she got paid $1,500. They're going to use it forever. And then later she's like still, and like at the time you're like 21 and you're like, oh, this is cool. Like people are sending me my own face, like at the post office.
And then you're like, wait, I should be getting paid for this shit. They're still using it 20 years later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, when you sign in perpetuity that you're giving, but
still, I mean, I don't know, 50, that seems like an easy way to game the system is just find a bunch of like young people that need.
Who do you think they put in stock photos? Yeah. Stock photos are the worst. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched Friends, but do you remember when Joey was like a stock photo in one of the episodes, and then they used him for like venereal disease?
I literally was thinking about that because I saw a clip of it, and he was like hitting on a girl on the subway, and then she like looks back and she's like, like freaks out.
What does so and so know or whatever? Yeah. But they can do that where it's like they can put you in like stock photography is always like the worst. They always like warn you about this when you're brand new. They're like, don't do stock photography because they can literally run it on anything. Like a political ad, they can run it on that because their stock photography is like you take a picture with no purpose. And like sometimes it'll be like corporate people wearing blue. Like it'll be something stupid like that. And then they sell it, and then people just pay for the usage for the stock photo because it wasn't specifically for some kind of campaign. The reason why the other stuff pays so much more is because like I don't know, Walmart doesn't want the same stock photo that like also Target's using. So they would rather pay like their own models and make sure like they own whatever this thing is. So that's like one of those things too. But I auditioned for stock photo print stuff when I was new because I was like, oh, whatever, who's going to see it?
Yeah, you're like, I just want money.
Yeah, you're
reps.
young. You're like, yeah.
Exposure.
Yeah, I want to tell people I'm a model. I want to be on a photo shoot, even though I'm getting hosed. Like,
I mean, I feel like that whole industry is kind of like that because you always hear musicians talk all the time. It's like the label owns all of my, like, not usage, but like they basically own the actual catalog.
Product. Yeah.
I get to play it, but it's my song that I wrote and whatever. I don't know. The whole thing seems slimy as fuck.
Like, also 10 years feels, I think, to my understanding with the music industry, and I'm not like an expert at this, I think it's like a 10-year contract. And can you imagine being like 18 and stuck with the same company till you're 28?
It would be so easy, because if you don't have a business sense, you're an 18-year-old kid that is like, oh my God, I'm going to get money. Because like, if you're an 18-year-old kid, they throw you 50 grand, you're rich. And then you're 26 and you're like, I just made them so much money and I got a fraction of it. They paid me 50 grand that I paid taxes on, and I live in California. So I really kept like 30 maybe. And then I'm still stuck with them for another 2 years. You're like, own all your likeness and booked nothing. It's like, well, sell your soul, book nothing. Take your pick. Yeah, maybe I should have just like done made an extra $1,500 or $2,000 or something here and there. But honestly, like working some of the non-union stuff was so miserable. Like the last thing I did, they didn't have chairs for us, and it was an overnight shoot at a bar. So we were like, I was like 34 years old sitting on the floor of a bar, like for this stupid commercial. Maybe I was 33. This was like a few years ago. And I remember sitting there and it was like before I joined SAG, because I texted all my friends. I'm like, I think it's like 2 a.m. It's a beautiful day to join SAG. So I'm like sitting here with like no chair. And like, I remember telling like the PAs, I was like, hey, like, can we get like some chairs or something? You're like, wasn't in the budget. Sorry. What made you want to get into acting? Well, I always wanted to do acting because when I was in 4th grade, I saw like a musical, and this kid that was in my class was like a munchkin and like the Wizard of Oz. And I was like, oh, this is cool. So then I did like 3 or 4 years of theater and could not sing. So I didn't even do anything good. Like I couldn't sing. So I was like ensemble and everything. Okay. Which is just like one of the extra people that like runs around the town or like whatever the thing is. And I've never had like a lead role like growing up. And then when I met Lucas, and then I was just like, I kind of like put aside acting through all of college. So I hadn't done it for like 5 years. And I was like, yeah, I kind of always like wanted to be an actor. He's like, why don't you do it? You know how Lucas is like very like golden retriever personality. He's like, why don't you do it? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And then I ended up meeting, so Lucas's mom, this is like my weird, how I got into it. Lucas's mom had like this best friend, and her daughter was in LA as a singer-songwriter. Okay. And I was like, oh, I'm from California. I'm like, everyone's a singer-songwriter, whatever. So I went to this woman's brunch. Like she had a brunch with like all of her like California friends and singer-songwriter and actor friends and like whatever. I'm 22 at the time. I go up there. Lucas's sister was with me. She's hungover from hanging out with her friends in San Diego the night before and like puked twice on the way up to LA. So we go to LA and we're like hanging out with all these girls. And I'm like, okay, singer-songwriter. This one girl like went to USC. There's like a lot of like actresses. There's like a girl who was like on a German TV show for however many years, like all this like, no, German pop star. And then a woman who'd been on an Australian TV show for 4 years. She's like, yeah, I just can't get an agent or something. I was like, she's like on like an actual TV show. And I was like, God, this is like the pathway's steep. So I was up there. I was like working a crappy job at the bank. I think I had just gotten robbed. Like all of it was just like miserable. There was like no money. And then I was talking to this woman and she was like, yeah, her like day job was she was like a personal assistant to, I don't remember who, I don't think she ever gave me the name, but it's a producer like Michael Bay, but was not Michael Bay. And she would like run around and like literally pick the dog up, take the kid to like run scripts to set. And so she's like, yeah, I just like, and she's talking about like her actual music career that she wants and how like disappointing her life was. And I was sitting there being like, I mean, working $17 an hour working at the bank and it sucks. So, and I just got robbed. And I live with my parents. And I'm like, okay, I like did all the things you're supposed to do, which is like finish college and whatever. But like this girl who's like life that she hates is like better than anything I'm doing because she just tried. And so I thought that was kind of cool. And then so she had actually her songwriting, she had sold 2 or 3 songs to TV shows, like to 2 Nickelodeon shows. So she made the money that way. And then her husband had also written for Criminal Minds, like a couple episodes at the time. They're like dudes, like the dude's like in his 20s. She's in her 20s. And I was like, I guess I could be working at a bank or like doing cool shit like this. And then so I just started like, I got an agent and then like I submitted like headshots, whatever, found a local agent, auditioned for a bunch of commercials, and then like took improv classes. And from there, like found my way back into the industry kind of. But it didn't really like end up being auditioning for TV and stuff until I went to until I went to Georgia. Okay. Because it's really hard to get into it in California. Just even an audition. Yeah. At my age, like in your early 20s, like you kind of almost want to start. Like if you were a child actor, it's not so bad. But then you're just mentally fucked. You're just mentally fucked. Or you had crazy parents or both. And then if you're over 21, now you're competing with people who actually went to Juilliard and like did like higher level theater and other things. And then you have nothing. So it's like if they want
leads and stuff, like there's plenty of art schools that have produced plenty of like young, attractive, hot people who also have like 4-year theater degrees and maybe parents with like really deep pockets.
And so they're going to pay and like be like a producer on it or something.
Something. I mean, like they say that that's not it, but even like RADA, which is the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London, they only take a few people like per year. I think it's like 30 something or whatever into their program. And like you look at how many like HBO celebrities and other stuff have gone to like these like art schools in the UK and stuff, it's like a very high percentage. You look up some like random person that you know, like think of any like Scottish actor or anything, they're from like one of these schools. And it's just like, that's like, if you're going to get into it, like that's what they're doing. And they had like this huge scandal a few years ago. If you look up like RADA, and I don't even know what you would like look up, but it was like, basically they were accused of only accepting rich people. And like, even the director said, yeah, well, like, you know, you're going to be broke when you're an actor. And so you need someone to be able to support you while you audition, and your chances of actually becoming successful are better when you're supported by someone else.
I'm looking up RADA scandal.
RADA and accepting people, I think, based on their accents, maybe. Yeah, it was like the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts and then like accepting rich people. And it was like maybe 8 years ago. I want to say it was like a few years before COVID. So
it's not popping up.
RADA accent acceptance, maybe. Can you cut this out if I look it up? I don't even know where my phone is. Oh, it's right here.
I was going to say, you were showing me that video of that girl getting her arm popped earlier.
Yeah. Let me see.
I don't know. If you look it up, it just shows all the Royal Academy of the Arts and all that stuff.
No, I want to look it up. They're like, they wiped it from the internet.
I was going to say, like, that's one of the things is like you just pay some like publicity company to wipe it. All right, I'm going to try not have a bunch of dead time, but we completely glossed over you getting robbed at gunpoint.
No, he said he had a gun. I didn't believe him.
Did he? He didn't.
No,
you just called it. He's like, I've got a gun. Give me the money. You're like, nah.
That's what I wanted to say because I didn't really think he had one. But they train you to like treat everything like it was a real. But bank robberies are very common. I didn't know this till I worked at a bank. And then like when they have them, they send because like the FBI, I guess, like does all of the cases. Whenever you're working at a bank in the area, they send you like, hey, this like Chase was robbed. This Wells Fargo was robbed. This ATM someone threw in the back of a pickup truck. Like all those type of cases, and like they send them to you. And like during, I want to say it's like bank robbery season's like October to January. I don't know if people are just poor during the holidays or like what it is.
Desperate for more money.
Desperate for more money, or like maybe stuff's like due. But during that time of the year, it's like you feel like every single day you're like, oh, this place got robbed or this place. But my guy just like came up and like they act like they're doing a withdrawal. They hand you a piece of paper like, hey, I want like this much money. And then it says, hey, I'm robbing you. Give me everything in your drawer. Mm-hmm. And then you just have to treat it like it's a real legitimate.
Don't tellers only have like $5,000 in the drawer?
So I worked at a credit union. And this is how I knew he was crazy. Is I'm like, if you're robbing a credit union, we have no money.
Yeah.
So we had like less than $10,000. But if you rob some of the banks, the ones that have like the bulletproof glass, they normally have a lot more money.
I was gonna say, I don't think they have. So my dad's a banker, and his banks have been robbed 3 times. And he was like,
it's common. Like if you work in the banking industry, you're like, you know someone, or like even when I first started working, like my manager had already been robbed. Like she got robbed at Wells Fargo. And she's like, yeah, I got robbed through like the teller line. And then the location I had worked at had already had a robbery because they let someone in after closing, which you're not supposed to do. And this was like, so when I worked there, it was like 16 years ago. And then this had happened 10 years before, so this is now like a really long time in the past, but they have rules. Like you can't, like everyone's like, oh, I'm sorry. I like left my keys inside. You're like, sorry, you have to come tomorrow because people will come after, like have you open up. And then because there's no one in the bank, they go and rob the closing teller lines. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So like, that's why they were like, sorry, we can't let anyone in after closing. That's everywhere. Like everywhere shouldn't be letting anyone in after closing. Cause a lot of places, like if you're a restaurant with cash or anything in it, like you shouldn't be letting anyone in after closing.
I'm trying to think. I think one of the times my dad said he got robbed, it was like they were in a board meeting and the board room like opened up into the main lobby. And I guess the number one way that people get killed in bank robberies is the robber gets spooked.
Yeah.
And so they had a red light that was like right above the door. And if it was going off, whatever. And my dad's like was the president of this like tiny little bank. And so his back is to the door and they're sitting there and he's like talking, like giving this presentation to the board. And like one of the guys like, hey, what's going on with that light? Like, why is that light going off? And my dad sees it and I guess just like locked the door and was like, we're getting robbed right now in that in the lobby of the bank, there is a guy with a gun or whatever that's robbing someone, and he, I think he got like $5,000, but it had one of those dye packs in it.
Yeah.
And so he took it through the thing in the side, and it went off, and apparently he had some of it next to him, and it just scalded his entire leg. He got 3rd-degree burns up and down his leg, all for $5,000 and then a federal sentence.
My person, he robbed me. We were the first bank he robbed. And then he was like, God, this is easy. And then he like robbed like, I think 12 more, like within
12. Man was like, all right, we're going to make a habit of this.
Yeah, it was like 12 in like 5 months or something like that. And he got recognized because his mugshot was like someone from his high school recognized it. Like he went to high school in the city that he robbed.
Fucking narcs.
Well, also, like, why wouldn't you go rob like the next city? Why wouldn't you go like an hour away? Like he like was a mile away from the high school he grew up and went to, even though he was older. So that's how you know like they're crazy. But he only got 5 years, and they let him out after like 3 because the FBI, when you're like a victim of a federal crime, they like send you like updates like, oh, he like got sentenced and he got moved to this prison. Also, he got let out for good behavior. Like 3 years later, I was like, what?
Good behavior.
I looked at my husband. I'm like, I'm going to go rob 12 banks and then get let out for after 3 years.
How much money did he keep?
Like, yeah. I'm like, do you know how much I would have to work over 3 years versus robbing banks? I mean, I'm not inciting anything.
Say it again for the camera.
Say it again for the camera. But I was thinking about that. I was like, I was like tallying how much my paycheck was for 3 years. And I was like, this guy robbed a bank, and I don't know whatever happened if they took the money back or how they did it, but
probably.
I guess you couldn't just be walking around with money. They would know.
Do you ever think about how easy it was to rob a bank before the invention of CCTV? Like before fingerprinting and closed circuit television, if you just like grew your beard out and went an hour away, you were now like Adam Smith. And then you go a town over and you're like John whatever, Brigham. Like, I don't know. Well, you just change your name.
One of the bank robberies that was happening, I don't even know if they ever caught the guy, but one of the ones that was happening when I worked at a bank was the guy who like got the old mask. He dressed like an old man.
Oh, yeah.
And then one of the times the dye pack went off and he ran across the parking lot. They're like, oh, he's not old. And then there was only so many theater shops that sold that old man mask. And so they went to the prospect. Yeah. And then they like went and investigated it that way. But I guess it was because the way that he ran in the parking lot after one of the robberies, they were like, oh, this guy's like, but he walked in like an old guy and like went and robbed it. And he was like this elderly robber.
Bro, you blew your cover.
But it's also crazy because when I got robbed and they looked at like the little camera, it was like still black and white, like Bigfoot. I don't know why.
We have 4K and people are still using like 360p like
everywhere
CCTV.
Too.
Yeah, and it's all grainy and it like jumps frames.
Why
like,
is that?
It jumps frames. It's like, yo, protect your shit, man. Like, I don't know how much it costs to get. That's probably a crazy thing. Get a 4K camera to.
I mean, we all have these like little computers in our hands, and I just like don't understand that if we have like our cell phones, like why it's so hard for security cameras to be higher definition. Like you can send stuff to clouds these days. Like you can do so many things that I'm like, are we still with like these grainy pixelated footage from whatever? And then you still see like in China, like they have like the social credit thing where they have like all the cameras that are watching people. It's like, so you're telling me those cameras with that grainy ass footage can tell exactly who you like. I will say, I do think that they're going off of people's devices. Because they have that function now with like Bluetooth where it's like they can kind of like do I don't know what it's called, but they can do like a castanet. I'm sure it violates. They can also blow up your pager and kill you. They can also fly a drone and kill you. Yeah. The technology is crazy these days. But also with the fingerprinting, they couldn't even fingerprint the guy that robbed me because that counter's touched by 1 million people. So how would you even know? Yeah. Like this guy was like walking around like this all over the counter, but so was everybody earlier that day. It's not like I wiped it between all the customers. And the people the day before. And it's like how often you deep cleaning the teller counter. There's like 1 million fingerprints. They'll never know who it is. $1 hour bank. That's a joke. Not everyone uses GarageBand. The 1 hour. I don't think about that so much. I thought you meant like we're at 1 hour, and then now I'm realizing, oh, the 1 hour bank. Just kidding. Sorry. No, that was why that made sense. No, it's like an hour and a half actually. Okay. No, I always get this thing for like an hour and a half, and it starts a little late. But yeah, I'm trying. What were you saying too about the bank robbery and something else about acting? How fucked up it. Oh yeah, how you wanted to get into it because you were like when you were younger, got into it. So are you kind of like forced to join SAG if you don't want to get taken advantage of? Yeah, if you want to do any kind of like legitimate acting, which is like TV shows or film, you have to join SAG because they can't hire you a lot of the time unless you're SAG. Unless you're like in a right to work state like Georgia, you could work a bunch of TV shows and never join the union. But if you're in California, and this is like the other thing too, even if you book stuff here and then you go and book something in New York or book something in LA where there's not the same laws, you'd have to join the union.
That seems like a monopoly. Like does someone own SAG?
I mean, they have like a president and stuff.
How much is that guy getting paid?
I mean, it's all unions.
How much is that guy getting paid? Like,
and what are they accomplishing?
That seems like a racket.
It's crazy because they take part of your, so I pay dues. I mean, these are like I guess, real numbers. I pay like $200 and something like every 6 months to them to just stay in the union. And they pull a part of my paycheck too. And then I also have to pay them a percentage. Like then you have to report your income. And then they also like ask for more money. I feel like I pay a lot to like as a girl who never works.
I was about to say, and basically it's like, hey, if you need us, we'll be here. And that's the
but
return.
I have, since I've joined SAG, because I happen to work this one specific project that's giving me a decent number of residuals, at least I'm not like going upside down on it. But I have friends who like quit acting altogether and they're just like not going to do it anymore. Cause like you have to like pay to stay in it. So they're like, I'm not acting. I don't want to pay this expense anymore.
How hard is it to get in?
I guess people say it's hard. I kind of joined like at a time where you could do like a crappy, like you could do what were they calling it? Web series before like Netflix was really streaming and all that stuff. Cause web series means a lot now. But like back in the day, I would just do like a web series and then, like your friend would write you a thing and just be like, oh, cause you had to work a union project to be able to join the union, but they won't hire you for a union project if you're not union. Yeah. That was the problem in California. It was such a pain in the ass.
It's like an entry-level job. It's like, we're looking for someone with 5 years experience, but this is entry-level. Yes, but you need 5 years experience. Well, then where am I supposed to get the experience? Like, that's insane.
So I never actually auditioned for any TV and film in California because I wasn't in the union. And then all my money was coming from, this is like before influencing and all that stuff. All my money came from non-union commercials. I booked like a ton of non-union commercials that were like 1 to 2 year usage. So I didn't have to like worry about like getting hosed or whatever. And then I just like booked a ton of those one summer. And I was like, well, why would I give up like even like $10,000-$20,000 to just like join a union and like maybe book a SAG commercial and maybe make a bunch of money. But then I met this girl who went to USC and she like booked like one of every commercial to not have conflict. So you can like work like one, the way that the thing is like you can work like Burger King, but you probably can't work McDonald's while it's still running for obvious reasons. So she booked like a fast food. She booked like a technology thing. She booked like a cell phone. She booked all the things and it like paid for her whole like USC education. But stuff doesn't pay that much anymore.
If you're in the union, can you work non-union jobs?
If you if you do that thing that's like looked down upon and it like makes you not able to vote and all that stuff in the union, I can't remember what it's called. It's the principle in all unions where it's like if you work non-union stuff, it's kind of like you're not a scab because that's during a strike. What is the thing called?
I don't know the word for it.
There's some phrase for it, but you can do that, and then it's like very like looked down upon. I mean, it's whatever. We're all friggin' unemployed. Shut up, SAG.
That seems backwards. Yeah, too. Like I know some people that are in like the food services industry in SAG, and it's like I think they are technically in the guild or something. I don't know if they're in it or what the deal is, but it's like obviously if SAG goes on strike, they don't have work.
Oh, it's like because it's like a solidarity thing. So like if SAG goes on strike and the Writers Guild or the whatever, we're all like supporting each other and.
Yeah, and so they were sitting there like, hey, we've got a mortgage to pay. And like, unlike a lot of you, I mean, I guess the assumption is like all these actors have millions and millions of dollars, like the guys living in Beverly Hills. It's like you guys are all rich and can exist for the rest of your lives without working. That's great. We're normal people that are doing service provision and we don't have that kind of money saved up. Like we've got mortgages, bills. And all that kind of stuff. Kids to feed.
Well, that's like the thing about the acting strike, which is, I think, I could have this number wrong, but I think it's like 87% of actors don't make enough to qualify for health insurance. And to qualify for health insurance, it's like the poverty level. I think it's like $26,000 a year. So I'm like 87% of us is not a full-time career. That's saying it nicely. Like it's just not even like quick
That's
trip
saying it nicely.
Cashier level of like career. It's not even that for most people. Like 87% of people in the union.
And we're not doing anything to help you get a job. But also if you go get a job outside of here, we're going to look down on you and like strip your rights away to vote inside of the union. That's and then fucking also, extortion.
The strike can last forever because I'm like 87% of us are already not working. Like everyone's talking about,
shut the fuck up. It'll go over however long. You're already starving. It doesn't affect
like,
you.
Of the 13% that were out there, like, in the streets, I was like, well, that's great for you, but we're all still working the same jobs. I mean, I'm unemployed and my husband bankrolls my lifestyle. But other than that, like, I feel like you could just, I actually was working during the strike this last year. I got a job at the gastro office because I need health insurance. So I was like, oh, my doctor was like, oh, you can work here. I have health insurance. I was like, really?
I'll take a job.
Yeah. Paid nothing, but I had health insurance.
Hey.
Because like if you aren't working.
You need that for jiu-jitsu.
I mean, really though. I also got Aflac and I still pay for that. That's like the injury one. Like if you break something, it like pays for your x-rays and like does all that stuff. I've already used it.
That's a whole other conversation. Insurance is insane to me.
Yeah.
Jumping back to jiu-jitsu, I blew my shoulder out, kind of back to jiu-jitsu, demoing a house. And basically when you looked at how much money it was going to cost between like deductible and COVID, like all that BS to go get my labrum done and how much it was to fly to Vegas and go get a stem cell injection in Vegas and fly back, I think it was like an $800 or $1,000 difference between the two. And I was like, I'll pay an extra $1,000 to not have to wait 6 months to be able to.
That's train. The other thing is it's so invasive and so many things can go wrong because it's more invasive. I mean, I'm thinking of maybe. Oh, we
were talking about the BPC shit. Yeah. BPC 157.
Yeah, I'm not getting drug tested.
Rachel Lamb, performance enhancing drugs.
Not a world champion.
Fake. Drug test her now
just
at IBJJF.
Old, and she wants to be able to brush her hair again.
Unacceptable.
Yeah. I came here like this. I was like trying to put on like just even moisturizer and I'm like.
It hurts.
It hurts. I can't. I like dropped off some keys at the front of my house and I was like, ow.
Ugh.
Yeah. It hurts more now that I've put it in the splint though. I don't know if it's Lucas said that that's normal. And I'm like, I don't know.
Is man. That?
I don't know. He's like when you stabilize it, I guess maybe like I don't know why it hurts more, but like when I took it off, I was like, wow, this hurts way more than when it wasn't in the splint.
That's whack.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see if it heals.
Last thing about jiu-jitsu, women's jiu-jitsu versus men's jiu-jitsu and all that fun stuff.
I'm having a hard time getting girls who don't do jiu-jitsu to do it because it's so gross looking. The number one complaint? The number one complaint is like they see the open mats and they see the things and they're like, they just see the sweat. And it has been summer, but they're like, that's like their biggest thing is like they don't want to roll with men and they don't want to roll with sweaty men. And I was like, well, that's fair.
Both of those are very fair.
And I don't know how to get past that. I was like, it's gross. One of the things I do tell them is I'm like, the first time I did jiu-jitsu, I only did it with Lucas for like the first 4 months, mostly at our old gym. But even like partnering girls, I was like, this is just like, I'm not even a hugger. At the time. Now I hug everybody. But like originally I'm like not like a touching person. And so when I was like doing it with Lucas, it was still, I was like, okay, this is fine. And then when doing it with a complete stranger, now I'm like, you touch people all the time that you don't know. You're like, hey man, you're working together, like you're partnering and it's like not weird.
Yeah.
It is weird when you work with a brand new person, you could feel that they're weird about it.
I felt that literally yesterday because it's like you're a little uncomfortable. You're like, this dude is like kind of hugging me in a weird way.
You're like putting something on a shoulder of this and you're like, oh, they're not used to this. But how it is weird that we meet so many complete strangers, we shake hands and we start doing jiu-jitsu with them.
You have like an odd comfort level in the fact, I mean, given you probably shouldn't because all these, like, there's plenty of McDojos and weird culty gyms and whatnot, but it's, you meet someone and it's a complete stranger and then you practice killing each other for 6 minutes and you're like, hey man, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're like chest to chest with a stranger.
Yeah. More than chest to chest. They're like driving their shoulder into your neck. You're like gurgling for it. Like it's fucking weird.
It is. That's what I think is hard for people to get past. But this is why I'm like, maybe when you introduce women to it, like if you're just doing like the open guard passing, maybe, you know, like they're sitting on and like they're just like, you know, you're walking to the side and they're just like shifting hips. I'm trying to think of like ways to break people into it where they can enjoy it. Not people, women, specifically women. I'm thinking of like ways to like break women into it where they're not so worried about like the touching and other stuff right away. And so many people are like, well, if they can't get it used, they'll never get it. And I'm like, well, give them a chance. Like get them a chance to see it and get used to it and try it and feel empowered by knowing some things. And then maybe they'll do more. You
don't have to go from this is my first class to, hey, go roll with this like 250-pound man.
Who's sweaty and maybe a little smelly. And their rash guard's gross. A little smelly. Everyone's a little smelly. Like, I mean, I even leave my like clothes in a bag for like a couple days and have to like vinegar it and do all the
While
things.
We're talking right now, I have my gi from last night. It is sitting. I didn't wash it when I got home last night because I was like dead tired and I was like, fuck, I need to wash that.
Yeah, it has like a certain amount of time before it smells forever.
Oh yeah. And then it's forever like just
like
stained.
The minute it gets damp, you're like, it smells like Tide and then you sniff it and you're like, okay, because now it's getting damp. It's starting to smell again.
Oh my God.
So that's why I'm like, I feel like there's a way to get more women into it, but I'm realizing that women I talk to my own age, when I mention all the jiu-jitsu stuff, is like they're really struggling with the touching and the sweat.
If you had to like design like the perfect situation to take a woman specifically from having not trained to like getting them up to 100% full on, because like you train with Homer and a bunch of the guys like all the time, like obviously case by case, but like on a more conservative timeline, like what would that look like?
I think I could, I've thought about this because I feel like eventually I would love to teach like women's self-defense, but in a way where it's like we're mostly doing a lot of the things that you would do in jiu-jitsu, but just staying on top more and not as much like, not as, like the same way that people do like jiu-jitsu for MMA, where like you're keeping in mind that someone can kick you or like, well, not kick you, but like hit you and all that kind of stuff. I think that that's like maybe the jiu-jitsu that you can try to like work on that time. And at least that is something, because I know for me, like I think about this when I do like competitions where I'm like, okay, I know what my game plan is. I don't have one of those for self-defense because I just don't think about it that often. But I am like doing more wrestling. So I think for a woman, what I've started doing with girls that I've just met, that they're like, this is my second day, this is my first day. I just do like open guard passing. I'm like, okay, well, don't let me grab your feet, your head, or your hands. And I just like go around and I just play that game where like we walk in like a circle and I like try to get past it, and then they shift hips and they like do that. That's like the first, I think that's like a good one, right? And then like standing, I'm trying to think, like, I think there's like things like that you can do where there's not as much contact, and then you move towards like, okay, close guard, mount, escapes. Cause
like half guard. Okay, cool. It's guard, but it's not.
Yeah. Or I think even doing a certain amount of submissions just so they feel like they know something. Like, because you also have to keep them roped in. It can't be so basic that they're like, I'm not really getting anything. But if you teach someone like, okay, maybe some open guard passing, okay, and we're going to do rear naked chokes, just something so that you're like, okay, and then you bridge the gap backwards from there.
I think that's a good angle. Like here, you get to feel what the end product is of like, you get to lock in a rear naked choke and squeeze and feel that person tap, and you're like, okay, this works.
Yeah. I mean, break falls, you have to learn to fall. I think that's the biggest thing, is like getting on and off the floor without hands.
Yeah.
In jiu-jitsu, that's a huge thing that even people our age can't do anymore. And as we get older, that's like the crazy thing about seeing like the jiu-jitsu grandmas and stuff out there is like, wow, these people are like collar dragging each other in the mats, and like they're break a hip age. Like it's crazy.
Also, I saw something that's like being able to get off of the ground without use of hands is like a longevity indicator in people. Like it's a lifetime indicator, because it's like if you, again, you fall, whatever, get disoriented, like you got to be able to get up. Like if you fall on your shoulder weird.
Yeah, even recently, like when I'm at the gym, I try to get up without my hands, and now I can pistol squat both sides with just a little bit of a rock. Yeah, I surprisingly, like I was doing this like for months, and then one day I just like went and rocked onto a pistol squat and stood up, and I was like, wow, this is what happens when you like focus on like getting up without your hands. But then when I was teaching someone else to like pull guard, like one of the guys, I was like, oh yeah, this is actually like a regular traditional guard pull is a little bit of a pistol squat.
Yeah.
And people fall so fast because they actually don't have that mobility.
And so they're literally just dropping down onto a hip instead of like sagging into it off of their leg, and then
you can kind of like use your weight and kind of like weigh yourself down and feel in control of it. Like you have a little bit more control instead of like wildly throwing your body weight,
flopping down to the ground and then opening up past. And
but like even like squatting, tucking your chin, like doing like a regular break fall is good, and then doing sweeps. I think like if you're on the ground and being able to keep someone away from you, like sweeping them. And then you're like practice, because I think falling is scarier. Like when you're new, even now, like in wrestling, it's not the wrestling that scares me. It's the falling
in a weird way.
It's falling in a weird way, like defending and like all that kind of stuff is just so much like back and forth that feels clunky. But the more I do it, I don't feel as clunky anymore. So I think other people will feel the same way.
Watching brand new people do break falls is, I would go take DK's class when he was teaching the intro class sometimes.
The way they even do this. Like,
and it's like you watch a break fall and it's like, in what part of the break fall did I say post my arms straight behind me? It's like, bro, you're going to snap your elbow.
I mean, I used to do, some people teach them this way where they tee out their arms. I know, instead of like a 90 or a 45 degree.
Yeah, this feels a lot more like going all the way. That starts to get into like extended territory. I don't like that.
Yeah, and even this way, your hands can hit before the rest of you. But I like what they do with the kids where they give them the tennis ball.
I've never seen that.
You can put a tennis ball between a kid's chin, and then when they hit the ground, it keeps their head from whiplashing, because that's the most important part. Because sometimes you don't actually get to do the whole slap.
Yeah, you just got to learn to keep your chin tucked.
Yeah, especially like I think the hardest falling when you're new is like when someone ashi sweeps you to the side and you're only falling on one side.
Yeah.
Doing the one-sided break falls, boss had me doing those because of judo, really like a long time ago, and now I'm like, wow, I can't believe I couldn't do that at one point, and now I can so easily break fall on one.
Slap.
Yeah, only one side. So I think break falls are like one of those things that, okay, well, at least when somebody knocks them over, they fall, like they can, and then shoulder rolls. someone hits you with a car. Like, I don't know. You might die either way. But like there was that story of that dude who like got hit by a car and he like went over and he's like, I tucked my head and didn't get hurt worse because I tucked my shoulder. And
you learn how to roll over and it's not that scary. I mean, once you kind of like feel the movement, like you can just add more amplitude to it and you still like can feel the tuck. I don't know.
If you think too, like how long you've done jiu-jitsu and how many falls you must have done in the time.
Hundreds and hundreds.
Now it's like if you fall out and about, you're much less likely to break a wrist or something because you just have those reps, even if it's on concrete. I mean, anything can still happen because a fall is a fall, but I'm like, wow, it's just crazy when you think of like you have that many hours of like falling that other people don't have.
I wonder how many people have wound up in a hospital because they didn't know how to fall. Like a fall that they would have been fine, woken up and like, damn, I'm sore. But they wound up in an ER and like snap their arm because they're like, oh, and they like post and then their elbow like does compound fracture thing. And yeah.
I definitely was a person who could not fall and was afraid of the idea of falling because I'm the person who like was too scared to skateboard because I couldn't fall.
Yeah.
And Lucas has always been like a soft fall because he used to skateboard. And I had like a lot of friends like in high school who skateboard. And the way that they fall, I just knew that I was a break my wrist kind of girl.
Yeah.
I'm actually too scared to do the wrestler fall where you go on your stomach with your hands.
Oh, really?
They're trying to get us to do that one. Yeah. It almost looks like you're doing the worm. Like almost. Yeah. I'm too scared to do that one. Because it's so foreign to what I do have experience in that I was like,
well, that gets a little.
Yeah. I'm like going this way. I'm like, this sounds like so dangerous.
Now that I think about it, I think the only reason I wasn't scared to fall is snowboarding. But snowboarding too, people break their wrists all the time. Like when you're teaching a little kid how to snowboard, no, they post.
Oh yeah.
Because if you're going down, like if you're toe side, and so like you're facing up the mountain, if you like catch an edge and go forward, like you press out, like you're doing the same thing. And if you do fall into ice, I guess it's even worse. But like you brace. So in snowboarding, they have these little things that they'll I don't know if they're like add-ons into gloves or if it's the glove itself, but it's basically like a plate that
like
comes
the
right
wrist
here.
Guards.
Yeah, and it pops up right here, and so it's like you
the roller skating ones, like the roller skating ones are just exactly like this.
Yeah, it's like that with a little bump. Yeah. Last question before this thing.
Time's out.
Yeah, I was about to say we're like way over time. I've been asking a bunch of people this. Do you think that you inherently trust people that you train jiu-jitsu with quicker than you would otherwise?
You know, I did, but now I feel like there's crazy people in jiu-jitsu.
Valid point. That's valid.
Yeah, I do think that there is something good about jiu-jitsu that makes someone show up a lot and be consistent. Because I do think jiu-jitsu is something that you can't fake as easily as other things. Or like even if you're naturally good at, it's just something that like you either put in the time to train and do the things or you don't. So I'm like, I feel like I have a lot of friends who will like do something once or twice or 3 times and be like, oh, I like did that thing. But I feel like jiu-jitsu doesn't appeal to that personality type because you're spending so many months being bad at it that like it really like weeds out a lot of personalities.
Yeah. And you do see someone's real personality, I think, when you're rolling with them. It's like if you're a dickhead.
Yeah. Or a hothead or a whatever. Yeah. And that is shocking. I don't know if you noticed that with guys too, where I'm like, there are guys that I like at our gym and other stuff. And then I'll see them in a heated situation with another guy and I'm like, wow, that's a different side of them. It feels like personal. And I'm like, but you see parts of that personality that I would only see out in the real world in some weird extreme situation.
Yeah, you definitely see like I don't know, everything's amplified.
Yeah, because
like
it's a fight.
Emotions are high. And too, especially at least for men, it's like the male ego of like, oh damn, I'm getting beat up. Like that's not a great feeling.
Yeah. Also like people, the way that they handle getting beat by someone who's like a lower belt, even if they're doing really good things. Like I'm always really proud when like the lower belts do stuff.
I will go to sleep before I let a lower belt out. You're like sitting there like, no, not like this, fighting like hell. You're like, please, God, no.
I feel like I learned a lot from Amon because Amon's always let me work. And then if I legitimately get something, I was like, oh man, I mean, I know you never really get something on a brown belt. He's like, no, you got that.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't believe you. He's like, no, I did all the escapes and you did it. So I try to be that way. I'm like, okay, just because like they got it, it's like, it's fine.
Yeah, this isn't my identity. It'll
yeah, okay. It's not. Yeah.
Until it is. And then people make jiu-jitsu their whole identity.
That's me.
No, and what did you say earlier?
I'm an unemployed housewife
whose husband bankrolls her lifestyle.
Unemployed, unsuccessful actress.
And jiu-jitsu athlete.
Rachel
Lamb, everybody.